Okay, we have begun. So we've got Paymahn here, Mihai, and Edwin.
Hey everyone, how's it
Daily
going?
death count has dropped, except no, it's actually going to hit another 9/11 today because right now it's 6 p.m. and it's at 1843. So that's fun. Yay.
I pretty much stopped paying attention to that stuff.
Wait,
Yeah, me
really?
too. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's like I feel like it's unduly stressful.
Unduly. Okay. All right. I guess I don't get what ultimately.
If I'm not doing anything about it. So like there are things I'm trying to do, but outside of that, like the watching the numbers increase every day, especially since I'm stuck at home now.
Can't really do anything. So
yeah.
Why? Yeah, why just subject yourself to it? New York's numbers dropped. New Jersey's doing worse today than New York was.
Really?
Yeah. This is a little clip from Future Strategist where he talks about probably the biggest, most glaring problem with the antibody studies. So it's like a minute.
Well, recently, some people have been optimistic, claiming that various studies have shown far more people
Everyone hear
have it
that?
than we thought, which, of course, if true, would mean that the death rate is a lot lower than we thought. What do you think of those studies?
I mean, I have a zero opinion of them. I think this is a case in which we have people who want a certain result, and they're looking for any error that can convince them that there is such a result. I could be wrong, but I doubt it. For example, those things, what was it, in Santa Clara, area in California, I think they had two things going on. They were accidentally, I think it was pretty much accidental, people started recruiting people who thought they might have had it because it was a way to get a free test.
Yeah, of course.
It doesn't have to be that way, but that's what happened. And the other thing is these serological tests, which are measuring if you have antibodies, which should say if you've already had it, they're all very new, they're all very raw, and they all, some of them are terrible and some of them are simply not great. I think they were just seeing false positives.
Yep.
I also
That's what you were saying.
That was the whole point of it. I mean, I don't think they were trying to find out what happened. I think they were trying to bolster a particular viewpoint. I know what statistical experts said when they looked at it. They said you made mathematical mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, and some of the basis of these mistakes is probably in error too. They're relying on some statistics from the manufacturer. They may not be right. There's not a first time that ever happened.
I mean, the software, the statistical analysis software,
So the important point there is that they reached out to a bunch of people. Edwin, I can hear like a noise in the background on your end, and when I mute you, it goes away.
Hold on.
Something making noise.
Hold on.
Anyway, so it sounds like in one of the studies, the wife of the researcher reached out to a bunch of people either on Facebook or through email and told them they would be getting a free coronavirus test and they could return to work which is all false, but they're getting a free test. Sounds perfect now. Yeah, thanks. And they told them they'd be getting a free test. And so the people more likely to sign up for it were people who had gotten sick over the past 2 months. Now, Paymahn, you mentioned that in some of these studies, a large fraction was asymptomatic. I'm going to look up, I think that might have been the New York study, but I'll just research that live, I guess. But anyway, so that's the take I got from.
Look, to me, I think there's a reasonable point to be made here about the integrity of the data and about the enormous amount of both false positives and false negatives that a lot of these tests have returned. So now, to the extent that we are trying to do science, I think having no opinion is the only responsible opinion, given how faulty the data is in a very, very direct sense. So you can't have 60, we're talking 60% correct. That's, just have a test at home. Just flip a fucking coin and you'll find out.
Yeah.
It's about as accurate as
It's terrible.
the commercial test that costs however many hundreds of dollars, right? So a lot of companies have kind of tried to steamroll through FDA and in other certs, or even gone ahead without full cognizance of the the local governments wherever they may be, and that's just very clearly profit motivated. Now, the medical community does not look kindly upon that. So, by releasing a test with 60% accuracy, you've just destroyed your company. Like, that company is never going to release another test. Nobody's going to trust you again within the medical community, and people
Theranos has
very
a
much
test.
look at that data.
That's
Right. I mean, but the underlying hypothesis of what Theranos was trying to do is in fact really valuable right now. If they hadn't fucked it up that badly, this would be
like
a tremendously big ally.
portable testing, like everything all in a box.
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to do 200 some odd testing, but there is a very reasonable hypothesis to be had and to be worked on of mobile testing kits that have a device that can itself be deployed on the ground. Because right now what we're seeing collection of fluids and mucus, and basically that gets shipped to an RNA testing facility for assays for traditional PCR, and those PCR machines, had we had 5 years and $2 billion to work on, I think would have been able to get somewhere. It's just that again they went for let's make a magic pill. Let's try to put 200 tests into this mystery box and basically pocket the money as best we can. And I think we're seeing that same level of exuberant capitalism happening in testing equipment today with COVID. Yep. In terms of making social policy, however, you're not allowed to wait, right? Like there needs to be some operational knowledge, which is what do we know that we can count on in terms of making a policy decision, right? Like what do we know operationally here? And that's a much more delicate question. We have seen economies that have been able to stay open, right? That includes Taiwan. The clubs are open again in Korea. I guess there is a fear of a second wave, but there are three different elements that we're seeing in all of those places. One is widespread and relatively reliable testing. Two is contact tracing. That doesn't necessarily need to be an app. In Iceland, they have detectives, their own police forces doing contact tracing, right? Like there's some element of privacy that's being maintained there, but you can't do that for a society that's got 500 million people. You just don't have the police force in those places. And the third is PPE. So in places like Hong Kong that had the now well-vaunted Hong Kong protocol since the days of SARS, SARS was much deadlier than COVID-19, and people did in fact wear masks constantly. The city was somewhat shut down, but they also very much went on an aggressive spree of everybody wears masks, and so that made a huge difference in terms of flattening the curve. And so for places like Hong Kong, like Taiwan, like Korea, where that fear of SARS, I mean, I haven't lived in Korea, that idea that we'll get some Chinese virus was very much there and true in 2018, never mind in 2020. So you did see people on a regular basis wearing masks, especially out in the more crowded areas of Gangnam and Itaewon, etc. You're not seeing that to a large extent in places like Sweden. However, Sweden has always had social distancing. And that's a thing that people do not talk about in most covering.
Just Swedish people like are a socially distant people. Like, without any.
Exactly.
They're just nerds. It's a country of nerds.
They're just nerds. They don't have that level of high physical affection that you find in France or in Italy.
Whereas in Italy,
that makes a huge difference.
Even the nerds aren't nerds. Like it's like the opposite. It's like what you would expect if there was a huge distance between those two countries and they're on opposite ends of the continent. Yeah, and Italians like kiss and touch and physically threaten and all this stuff that Swedish people
but also live in very densely populated areas. So if you look at Italy, if you look at how many people live in a city, they tend to have a very, very low populated countryside, right, that may be small, but everybody lives on top of each other in these apartment blocks, and these apartment blocks may be medieval. They may date back to 14, 1500, be made of stone, but they're still functionally apartment blocks. Whereas a country like the Netherlands, they may have Amsterdam, but the Dutch dream is a lot like the American dream. It's to be in a suburb somewhere with your own house. And so the entirety of the Netherlands is populated, very, very much the entirety of it. But if you drive through the country, what you see is this just endless suburb with a couple of cities like The Hague and Amsterdam,
right,
and Rotterdam, right? So
Netherlands is
much
very populated as a country, but it's not. It's spread out in a weird way. It's like
very evenly spread out. And so if people are staying at home, then most people in the Netherlands do have like a house. They have a backyard. They have, they live in a little town that has like their little town hospital. It's definitely not the same thing as, say, the United States, where it's, yes, there's a lot of suburbs, but there's also just absolutely endless nothing, right? Like there's just places where you have fields that cover, a square mile. And you're not going to have that in most of Northern Europe. And again, there is that culture of just socially distant people that are sitting, far apart from each other, right? Just waiting for the bus in 2018. Never mind 2020. So that makes a huge difference. Never mind the lack of pollution, right? Never mind the much higher grades of food, the higher grades of just general healthy living. There's much less hypertension, diabetes, obesity. The factors that are the most highly correlated to COVID deaths are in fact not very prevalent. And you're still seeing 10% of people who have contracted COVID in coffins today in Sweden.
2,500, 2,300 deaths. That is more than 10%. That is actually like 12% of Swedish people who, if they go by 19,600 people have it, 2,300, just the raw stats that we know. I'm sure more people have it than that, but probably more people also have died of it than we know. So
I do think the virus is less deadly than reported, especially given what we're seeing with the antibody test in sewers. Like, that seems to make sense to me. However, that is.
Oop. You cut out there. Sorry. Do we lose Mihai, or is it just me?
I don't hear him.
Oh,
yeah, I don't hear him either.
Okay, well, he'll be back in a second. And he's our celebrity guest. Oh, there you are. Mihai, you cut out.
As the WHO just said, we don't have anyone to properly. Thank you. Sorry, I was saying that we don't have immunity to this thing insofar as WHO always
mentioned
reports
that. Okay, what's
rosier outlooks, quite frankly, than we've seen.
Immunity, COVID. I must type COVID. Okay, COVID. Immunity passports in the context of COVID-19. A positive COVID-19. I'm glad. Like 4 hours ago, all these articles came out that were like confirming all my fears today, like the false hope of antibody tests here. And then on the Atlantic, and then Vox is saying antibody tests say and don't say about immunity. A positive antibody test does not mean you're immune. The thing about like viral exposure, and this is something else from that podcast I wanted to find, but I didn't have time before this, is like it's a statistical battle. There's all these layers that the virus is going through, like in your mucous membranes, and you might have 90% of the virus gets stopped through your mucous membrane, and then 90% of the remainder gets stopped by your innate immune system. But then the last little bit, there's some probability that it's going to infect enough cells to get a hold on your immune system, or on your body, on your cells, and sort of get past all the layers. And it's kind of a all or nothing deal. Like it's in the sense of like, rarely do you have a single virus infect a single cell and that leads to a person having the whole illness. Like it's usually seeded by, because the odds of just a single cell living through or a single viral fragment rather living through all the different stages is either all of them get wiped out early, or there's just enough of a viral load that you end up with a dose at the end, couple million, couple thousand, something like that. And actually, it looks like the longer the virus takes to gestate, or to incubate,
Be
right?
copied. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to sort of start to spread before it really attacks. The longer that the virus takes, which some viruses like SARS, showed up in at least in Canada, there was a little bit of an outbreak with the original SARS, but it was stopped because as soon as you're showing symptoms, or as soon as you're infecting people, you're also in the hospital. So you could just stop everyone who is infectious by just stop in that area, just get everyone, put them in a hospital, put them in isolation, something like that. This one has that weird 4 to 10 day period where the fact that it's growing that whole time also means that if you start your exponential function, if you start the growth earlier, you'll end up with, if you start it with a higher initial dose, you'll end up with a worse infection later, because it translates into, so let's say the virus goes from 1,000 copies to 1,000,000 copies in 6 hours. That's not that big a deal if you start with 1,000,000 instead. If someone sneezes right in your face, it's not that big of a difference than if someone just wipes a little on you. If you're infected, you're infected. But with this virus, because it's stretched out over a longer period, getting sneezed on in your face means that you may have 1,000 times or 100 times as much viral load as you would have gotten if you just came in contact with a surface. And that starts you days ahead in the infection. So your immune system has days of less time to rally a response. So people die more quickly and more based on the amount of viral load that they get with this virus, it looks like right now. We're going to find out about this over the coming years. I'm sure we'll find out all sorts of stuff about it. The other thing is it's mutating. Mihai, do you have anything on the mutation of this thing? Because
do you hear what Taleb said recently about the virus? Did you see Taleb's interview?
Taleb?
No, I haven't. What is it? What does he say?
Probably thinks he was emphasizing masks and how, like a 50% increase in, blocking particles could mean like a 90%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His whole idea is if you block the super spreader, you actually basically eliminate the whole transmission process.
Because a super spreader is an example of a black swan. Now it sounds like he's calling the whole pandemic,
I don't know if black swan is the right word, but
no, it would have been
it's from Extremistan.
Right. Okay, fine.
Right.
There you go. That's a bit. But knowing about that church that had a connection to Wuhan that ended up in South Korea, and where church with a connection to Wuhan, and then didn't let you wear masks, and you had to come in if you were sick. Like the worst possible. It couldn't have made it worse if they were all making out as well at the service or something.
Right.
The worst possible combination of things. And that was a church that had that or a cult, let's call it what it is. But okay, so I'm seeing the latest interview by him is March 30th. Is that the one we want to see? There's
there's a newer one.
Okay.
If you go to YouTube and filter by last week, I think you'll see
my dogs
maybe
have arrived.
any time, not any duration.
Yeah. Hey boys.
It was 3 days ago.
Past 2 weeks.
All right. Economist's warnings. Up next, Black Swan author. Oh, here we go. No, wait, no, that's different. Let's see here.
Yeah, these people keep saying
oh yeah, this one.
Serological tests have lots of false positives and false negatives, and they're kind of attacking the data. This is the false positive rate of PCR testing.
PCR?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
probably quite high.
Yeah. Well, and that's the DNA test. PCR, I think, is RNA. Copying. Okay. Well, it was making many copies of so I always figured the PCR was going to be the more accurate one, but maybe let's see what we got here.
I linked this video, I think, and
yeah.
Run that. I think I saw this.
Who warned of an acute virus across the world in his book, The Black Swan, back in 2007, and he warned of the systemic risks of the coronavirus, and he did that in January of this year before it reached pandemic status. Joining us right now is Nassim Taleb, Universa Investment Scientific Advisor. He's also a distinguished professor of risk engineering at NYU's Tandon School, and we're thrilled to see you, Nassim. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You
Thanks
did
for
call it
inviting
right. And you saw the black swan that so many unfortunately did not.
It
It
was
was
actually
published
not a
about
black
this
swan,
January 26th.
It was not a black swan.
Not
It was a
black
white swan. I mean, think about it. I mean, you've had movies about pandemics. How could it be a black swan, an unexpected event coming from out of left field? It can't be. It was. First of all, the system delivers such events with regularity. Okay. The problem that we have today is that it delivers them much faster and things spread much more effectively because you have Air France, British Air, American Airlines helping you transmit the disease, plus all these large conferences. So it was a white swan.
So, Nassim, the question I'd ask you though, now is, given where we sit, and given the unknowns that still exist about how many people have it, what the spread could look like, the possibility of reinfection again, what is your prognosis or your prediction, to the extent that you can, or at least how you're thinking about it,
Okay,
consider the duration of this and what it's going to do to the economy?
For a few months now, we've been begging people begging authorities to encourage the use of masks, and of course we've had very poor reactions on the part of the authorities. We can't get the difference between absence of evidence, and absence. Say, well, we're not sure they're effective. I'm not sure my seatbelt is effective. I still have it on. So but there's something that authorities were not getting, and that's something very related to universal investment strategy. Something called contact convexity. They're not getting at all is that if I wear a mask and it's not very effective, and you wear a mask and yours is not very effective, we're going to reduce the probability of infection by 1 order of magnitude. So it goes down. If my mask is only half effective and yours is half effective, it goes down by 75%. And the next person, of course, for the next person, even more. So you end up having a huge payoff at the third, fourth person that's being infected. And you can effectively you could have controlled the pandemic, okay, instead of spending trillions, with very, very simple measures: reduce mobility, prevent super spreading events, and mandate masks. We still are not using masks today. We shut down the economy, but we don't recommend using masks. Plus, there's another thing about convexity of masks that people are not getting. Say a mask is only 50% effective in reducing the viral load that you receive, okay? Well, that may be sufficient to reduce I mean, depending on numbers, we need to see a clear study, but if there's convexity there, it may be sufficient in reducing, okay, the probability of infection by 90%. You see? Yeah. Because of convexity, because of, you need a lot of viruses to get infected, not just one. Yes.
So given that though, how do you think about the marketplace right now?
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is we are dealing with severe unknowns. Okay, we cannot anybody make a pronouncement about the future. We're dealing with very severe unknowns. Everybody has been surprised by this virus. The Chinese were surprised, then Europeans were surprised. We should have been surprised given the data. But so everybody, we don't know. We even do not know if people get reinfected again. Okay, we have so many unknowns. So unless we clear up, we're going to live in a domain of high uncertainty. In the meanwhile, we can start with very simple measures: mandate the use of masks. I'm not infringing on your liberty. I just don't want you to infect me if I'm in a public place. Use of mask. We don't even know how far it spreads when there is air conditioning or the wind. Mandate use of mask. Small little measures prevent people from riding elevators in groups, prevent subways, prevent the super spreader events, and that's 90% of the problem. So we have uncertainty.
Are you investing though right now? As far as markets though, yeah.
I would say no. I would say that it's very unwise to do any form of investment without tail risk hedge, because we really don't know. You don't want to miss on the rally if the problem goes away, but at the same time, we have a monstrous amount of unknown ahead of us.
I think markets are still overvalued.
Let me ask you another question. You often talk about
way overvalued
and morality of money and all sorts of issues.
We're now.
What do you think of the steps that the government has taken?
I'll pause it. You said we're now in what?
I mean, we're now at 25 million recorded unemployed within the last 5 weeks, right? 25 million new.
It's going to be a V-shaped recovery.
Unemployed. There's no
right.
There's no recovery.
Unemployment went down. Oh, Mihai, you muted again.
Here, man. So the price of oil has collapsing and demand collapsing has shut down a lot of refineries. Without refineries, we're missing very core ingredients to the American manufacturing economy, which is supposed to be taking us out of this. It's not just oil, it's plastics, it's polymer components, it's components to make chemicals that we use to make drugs.
Right.
Most of the medication that you ingest has at some
petroleum
layer in it a oil-derived benzene or hydrocarbon that is absolutely essential to making chemicals. And those chemicals are not in abundance anymore. And the price of turning on an oil refinery is astronomical.
Yeah.
You're seeing that with the CO2 shortages that have been that have been widely marketed. Same thing with other industries that haven't shut down that are, to a large extent essential, like the pork industry. You can't have people working in these close conditions during a pandemic, and we've seen that with one factory, and I believe it was North Dakota, that had 500 employees turn up positive. Right, so now that single factory was responsible for 5% of the pork output in the United States. Up to 11 million people may have been kicked off of their healthcare. So at the same time, the hospital system that you would think is making a lot of money from this is in fact not, as they're having huge problems with the insurance. They're having a ton of people show up for emergency care that will not be able to afford to foot those bills. And so what we haven't seen yet is this really big wave of bankruptcies that I believe at this point is completely inevitable, even if magically COVID is cured tomorrow and the economy starts up again. Supply chains just don't work that way. When you've turned off a supply chain of that size, it'll take 8 months to turn it back on, if we turn it back on tomorrow. And for every month that it stays shut down, the time required to turn it fully back on is going to increase. We're seeing that in practice with China, that as it is turning back on, we're not seeing factories like MSI and Asus that are making PCs, assembling at the end of the line. Those guys have not started back up.
Well, isn't part of that just the demand isn't there globally for their products?
The components,
they're so
no, I mean, they can't. Like the components are not there because the component manufacturers have stopped. So even assuming demand would be there, which you're right, it isn't. But even if we take the best of cases and COVID is magically cured and demand comes back, you still cannot turn those factories on all at once. You need to, you need to make the transistors, you need to make the wafers, you need to make the PCB boards, you need to make the tracers, you need to do your PCB assembly, you need to make your boxes, you need to turn on your injection molding again, you need to source the plastics again. Like there's all of this stuff has been redesigned mainly over the last 50 years into the just-in-time Japanese model of Toyota. And so while that system is a lot more efficient, as long as every part of it works, it's much more fragile if the supply chains themselves fully shut down. So it was not built with any concept in mind of supply chain shutting down, which means there's no warehouses that are filled to the brim with components, ready to go if you're going to turn on assembly, right? So by the time that you turn the economy on, it'll be, and I'm talking about the economy of China, right? Like they do manufacturing, they do it very well, but they're about on a 5 to 6 month lag time, and that's according to the China News Daily, the China Morning Post, right? Like, and those guys are sponsored by Alibaba, like owned by Alibaba, whatever. Like, they're by no means a fully unbiased perspective on China. If anything, they're going to be rosy, and their outlook is negative GDP growth for China for the year. That means GDP loss for the year. That is, in economic terms, that is a depression in China. They have not seen a full depression in a very, very, very long time. And
when was the last time?
That would have been probably in the 50s. With some
after
of
the Civil War,
around the Mao area. Yeah, after the Civil War. When basically they ended up with that big famine that they didn't even admit to for many years.
Yeah. I don't even know how they measured GDP at that point in time in their economy.
1976 was the last time that its economy shrunk at all.
At all, yeah.
And
so
this
that would be
when it was reported to shrink.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
Good point.
Which is
Yeah,
I
well,
think,
Right,
really.
but even so, the reforms of Deng Xiaoping were very effective. The special economic zones were very
Extremely.
effective. I mean, you would be able to see that GDP growth with the naked eye. There are new cities popping up. There's more stuff that's being bought by every country from China. So, you know, do I believe those numbers as being 100% accurate? No, but certainly in terms of was there growth or not, I think it would be obvious to the most casual of observers outside of.
I have coworkers who
definitely.
grew up like in Shenzhen, and they go back and they see it, and it's like it was like farmers and stuff when they were kids. Now they're older, they're middle-aged now, and now it's just skyscrapers and everywhere. Like that's the same place.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. Imagine New York coming up in 40 years or 30 years or something. That'd be
well, and their central banking model is interesting, right? Because they, like a lot of their state industries, their mandates are more to grow than to be profitable because they get so much money from the state so often. So
hence
it's
all
really
the fake stuff.
Yeah. So the business cycles the U.S. has been prey to over the same period of time has definitely not affected China. The government's just grown them out of everything. So a depression now would be. Well, I wouldn't say it's fake either. Actually, I agree with
it's subsidized,
you.
but it's not fake.
It's subsidized, but it's not fake. It's a weird. I switched to my like neoclassical understanding of economics.
What exactly is fake?
Subconsciously.
What exactly is
what? Fake would be the fake numbers, right? Fake would be, hey, we're telling everyone we have enough food when we don't, right? Which is what happened in the 50s, right? Like that's fake. You know, what they're doing with state subsidies is they're making very, very long-term bets, right? So they're saying on a societal level, hey, it's worth it for us to figure out how to make an Android phone for $20 because then we can sell all of that to India, but also then we can capture this market, right? It's the ability of, say, Facebook to subsidize Oculus and sell headsets at a loss, or Sony to subsidize PlayStation and sell the hardware at loss, because another part of their conglomerate is, you know, making software. It's getting software licenses for games that are going to be sold on the platform. So in the long run, it makes sense, but you need to be a much larger actor than one that's narrowly confined to the sphere of activity that, you know, X team or X product is in fact doing.
This is when I think of fake growth, I think of underoccupied development things.
Right.
Yeah, they just
but that's really interesting, right? Because that's just all that says is government action in this sector needs to be more thoughtful than in, let's say, R&D. But for some reason, because of like the general economic framework that we're all like subject to, either like for most people not through study, but just like the way we talk about economics, this sort of thing is what you would expect from government stimulated growth. It sort of just reinforces that narrative.
People will live here eventually. Beep boop beep boop.
But think about how much labor. Well, but think about how much labor went into building these cities. There has to be, like,
but
you know, other.
The labor went in. You paid the laborers, but the money that went to the laborers that later the laborers might spend on other things, and the developers might spend on other things. That money, it's like it kind of was. It's like the same way you can take amphetamines to stay up. You know, you can give them to a soldier so they'll stay up for 30 hours, but it is not replacing sleep. There is still a debt to be paid.
I guess what I'd say is it's good.
Oh, Paymahn, you're muted. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying that's a really good metaphor. I like it.
Yeah.
No, I like it too. I guess what I'm saying is it's good that the Chinese government experimented with this sort of thing, even if all their experiments didn't work.
Good. It showed us all. They're our control group.
Well, no, I think they're just going to demonstrate that big government fails yet again.
But it can succeed also, right?
What?
It's like
it fails and succeeds. It depends.
I wouldn't say that
depends how you define
the Chinese
succeed.
government failed or that big government fails. I would say that
not at all.
So you can show what, you know, it's behavior leading to outcomes, right? Like they're subsidizing some things and not others, just like the U.S. government is heavily subsidizing R&D just, leaning towards military applications doesn't mean they don't come up with stuff like memory foam or, the internet, right? So there's a lot of different variables at play here, and I think it's unreasonable to say we should have no government, because you're still, government is just a organization of people, right? Like, it's just an organization of people with the powers that we determine, that ideally, like, the people who are being organized, right, have some power over. It's no different than a company, right? Wherein there's, you can set up your company in all sorts of ways. You can set it up so that the voters are your employees, so that the voters are, your investors. But ultimately, no company works without some amount of voting being involved, and some amount of external input, external to the one CEO decision maker, right? Even if that person may act as a dictator in the sense of, they have the final word,
right?
They're still getting their information from somewhere.
The same way. There's always you always have to delegate. Yeah, of course. But I mean,
like,
that's
no
like a
human being can
computational.
run an organization of 100,000 people, like, period. Like, no one is that kind of smart or to that extent. Like, that brain doesn't exist, right?
I think
that's why conspiracies break down.
I think if
what if that brain did exist? If intelligence was an extremistan like that.
If we grew.
You tell Jeff Bezos to stay out of my factories, okay?
Specifically, the Bezos alien from the South Park episode, where he's the butthead aliens with the giant. I don't know. This is a South Park episode that made fun of Jeff Bezos. I think I already showed it on the podcast before, but.
Have you guys seen Midnight Gospel?
What's that?
It's on Netflix. It's really worth checking out. I think you'll really like it.
What's the TLDR?
Look it up here.
This guy named Duncan Trussell.
Okay.
Oh, Duncan Trussell's awesome. He was on Rogan recently, but I've been listening to his podcast for a while.
Yeah, well, a lot of he just animates conversations he has with people.
Cool.
Well,
but the entire framework is like you have. Yeah, but the entire idea is like that Rick and Morty thing where it's a universe simulator. So he picks a universe, jumps into it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Whoa.
What's this we got here? He's putting his face into
the universe simulator that looks like a vagina.
Okay, all right. I was just making sure everybody saw what Paymahn, I feel like you would love.
I stare out.
I love Rick and Morty.
Oh well, there you go.
Rick and Morty is amazing.
Here we see.
Oh, that's great.
Cycle.
Guys, I'm gonna have to jump off in a minute. I got another call coming up.
Thank
you very much for letting me talk.
This is a little different.
This is the same. This is Mihai here from a Bloomberg article.
Nice.
Yeah, about billionaires, where it suspiciously does not mention that he is so not a billionaire.
I was wondering about that for a second. I was like, Paul, is there something about
Can't trust mainstream media, Edwin. Hasn't Trump taught you anything?
Oh boy.
Oh man. All right. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Right.
See you in the next podcast.
Wow, we had him on here 3 months ago. In February. So no, 2 months ago.
2 months.
How do you guys know him?
I know
Paul knows him.
Through my roommate, through the guy from the second podcast. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's already been on, so I can mention it here, I guess. Yeah. My roommate started Gamergate.
Oh, Iran. Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, he's great. And he knows Mihai because he knows all sorts of interesting, random. Anyone, that song like, I got friends in low places. Aaron is that song personified. He knows all these people, and they're like brilliant but kind of nuts. Like they kind of rely. I don't know how much detail I should put it, but they like a lot of them rely on Aaron because he's for emotional support. Like he's like the slightly psycho genius nerd whisperer. Not that he's a slightly psycho genius. It's that he's the whisperer for the nerds who are kind of a little off, but they're brilliant. Like they turn to him for all sorts of like I don't know, for whatever. I mean, maybe I am an example of that. I'd hate to, but he definitely has a stabilizing effect on the mentally unstable. It seems. Oh, hey, Caio.
Oh, Caio's here?
Yeah, he just joined.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hello.
It's good.
Nice
We're back to
meet you.
4. Mihai just left, so.
Oh, too bad. Oh, there we go. Video's off. All right.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. This is Paymahn.
Dude, tell us about.
Brazil just had their worst day yet.
Really?
For Corona. I mean, I haven't been following horse race stuff, but it's been getting worse.
Yikes! 5,000 dead.
But sort of on the expected curve, more or less.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything I see about Bolsonaro is completely out of context.
It's the media hates him.
It's just him shaking hand with COVID victims, or like COVID, just like doing.
Right, I'll give you the
kisses coronavirus baby.
No, I'll give you the story. I mean, there was a COVID case in his cabinet.
Oh boy!
And now a newspaper is trying to get a medical report. His COVID test, right, to try to make it public. A lot of people think he did have it. Right. We're recording now.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Just checking. So that's something that's happening right now. The issue with Bolsonaro, as I've been saying for a long time, is that his own actions and rhetoric are not the same as his administration's policy, right?
Yeah.
Like he's sort of this brash populist kind of guy. So like he has been minimizing the crisis, and that's bad, in terms of people listening to him, not taking it as seriously, and the specific, he called for demonstrations at the time when it really had just started to pick up, public demonstrations and stuff.
What?
In support of him. So there were those things that were bad, but they're relatively small and contained compared to his administration's policy, which has been mostly comparable to sane countries, let's say.
Yeah.
We're doing a lot of isolation here. I've been home from work for several weeks now. A lot of places
you got masks for your employees like in February.
Yeah. I had like a slight edge on everyone else, because the news really started coming in during Carnival, and that kind of fucked me up because everything was closed during Carnival. I mean, because of the holiday, unfortunately, you still had the crowds and millions coming in from abroad.
That's probably not working out well.
So I only managed to put in the order on Ash Wednesday when things opened up again, but I managed to get some N95s and surgical masks.
Do you use them every time you leave the house?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, the dogs are.
Is that the long nose?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Both
Anyway.
of them. Yeah.
Do you use the masks every time you leave the house?
I have been a little remiss, but in general, yes.
Yeah.
Keep a packet of masks in the car.
Oh.
And so to go shopping and stuff. And I'm seeing a good number of people in the supermarket and stuff wearing masks. Not everyone yet. And it took a while for me to see them in employees wearing masks. I work at a family radiology clinic. The doctors there are basically reusing N95, cycling a week's worth. So they'll wear one day and then leave it for a week, drying out. So that's something they've managed to do to make them last longer.
That's pretty effective.
Yeah. They looked into sort of the best.
I'm wondering why we still have such a shortage. Somehow I feel like N95s should not be that hard to make.
No, they really shouldn't.
Yeah, man, I don't understand this shortage of masks, man. It's almost like a bunch of people bought like every mask they could find. As soon as it's crazy, there's none. Anyway, so
I heard the story of a guy in Australia who wanted to return over 1,000 rolls of toilet paper.
I missed the last part of that. What'd you say?
He wanted to return over 1,000 rolls of toilet paper. He bought like 150 32 packs.
Toilet paper feels like one of those things you shouldn't be able to return. But it's nice though. I mean, I guess if there's a shortage, he's returning. But he took 3 packs.
I'm just
100 packs. Sale.
Yeah. It's like, what was he thinking buying that much?
When you gotta.
No, and I haven't seen toilet paper shortages here at all.
Did he think society would just literally end?
I'm gonna need enough toilet paper until I'm dead.
What I've been seeing in the U.S. is the issues with meat packing and disruptions in
all the chickens and shit.
Pork.
Yeah. Have you guys seen if that's like big? If that's like just. Yeah.
Indiana pork plant, second to test all workers, blah, blah, blah. Why are there so many outbreaks at pork plants? I mean, I know what the Bible would tell you. That's an unclean animal, probably because it's too similar to us, actually. But anyway, that might be
pig skin and human skin is like. I mean, almost the same.
They actually are weirdly similar. There's even a crazy, now I'm going off on a tangent, but there's even a crazy, there's a hypothesis, it's like macroevolution.net or something. There's a hypothesis that has some support, which is that.
I know what you're talking about, and I mostly blame you.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Well, because
what's the hypothesis?
The hypothesis is that basically ungulates, or maybe they're whatever the pig ancestor was. If you got, not that a pig fucked a monkey, it's that if you just bear with me here. It's that if you go back far enough to when pigs and monkeys were not that far apart, they had a common ancestor that was only a few million years before, that maybe there was a reproductive event that branched and led to the great apes. I can see it. That's a really cool idea. And there's a lot of weird immune similarities, things that overlap where you're like, oh, okay, maybe they even look, I mean, you could see how if you look at a regular monkey and then you look at a great ape, you're like, well, there's something kind of horse-like or like, cow-like to a great ape that is not apparent in a gracile little monkey with a tail and everything. So it's not completely insane. And that's how a lot of speciation events happen, is you hybridize with something and you get all this weird momentum, evolutionary momentum, because it only takes one. You only need one successful hybridization event to just basically, you suddenly have a whole new species that just comes about. I mean, usually it does not produce a new species, but the one event where it does, there's lots of hybridization in nature. Most of the time it's sterile, but sometimes it's not.
Every now and then leads to a sexy new species.
Yes, like us eventually. So we would be the pig monkeys of the future. And then that would be part of the reason why it's so dangerous to live around and eat pigs. they share parasites with us. There's a lot of things that other farm animals don't get, but that pigs do and we do. So, and that are bad. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing that the Bible noticed before everyone. So that's cool.
So Paul, did you see the new UFO stuff the Pentagon released?
I briefly saw a little article, a headline about that. You want me to check that out? Because we don't have like an agenda.
Well, apparently it's footage that's already been available to the public, but the Pentagon wanted to
officially
to be like, they're not making this up or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is the footage of things. Here, let's just watch it because there's stuff that is hanging
Aliens
out.
are fucking real, Paul.
I mean, at the very least, there's insane technology that couldn't, like, I can't imagine having come from our current.
Anywhere else. Yeah.
I don't know. Or there's some.
Do y'all
there's
trust
some
the Pentagon?
Well, that's a good point.
This is a very complicated history. UFOs.
This was released by a different dude, right, or something. There's originally previously been released by a private company. Okay.
Oh, that's right. I can't.
Navy confirms UFO videos.
But I mean, the UFO sightings were real.
There are flying things that are objects that are unidentified. That's real.
Well, the sightings were so consistent that the military set up procedures for reporting them.
Oh boy, that's
wow. Like pilots saw them so often.
That's so fucking weird, man.
Yeah.
All right, let's watch some of this. What do we got? How long?
Yeah, I've never actually watched UFO videos.
2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Ever, yeah.
I have a couple of podcasts for you to listen to.
Send them, dude. Send them right now.
Joe Rogan stuff.
Joe Rogan's podcast with Bob Lazar.
Second of 3 videos. The only official footage that has been released that was taken during the 2004 Nimitz incident and has a chain of custody, blah, blah, blah. Beyond advanced targeting, forward-looking infrared pod, which contains the most advanced sensors and powerful tracking systems on the market. Oh boy.
What about what's off the market?
Yeah. You guys familiar with that book a few years back about Area 51?
Which one?
No. What's that?
I think it's just called Area 51. It's by a woman reporter. But what I'm getting at is that in the final chapter, she says, up to here, we're all talking about, confirmed documented history. Now let me talk about like some crazy sort of not quite documented, but credible.
Yeah.
Things that I saw, that I heard.
Sorry, I'll turn it down. Go ahead. So the book. Okay, carry on.
Oh, that's weird.
There's a thing.
The object appears dark against the bright daytime sky and is clearly oblong shaped.
Yeah.
Because it's a saucer.
Well, they say tic-tac shape, right?
Well, it says oblong, but I'm sure that is
some of it's tic-tac, some of it's actually shaped like a Game Boy, sort of.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Are any of them shaped like dicks? That would be a real difference.
I mean, to be fair,
how intelligent they made the shape.
That's true. Definitely always stay excited, so he's sticking straight out.
No, I've seen that.
Oh, okay. When
I don't know which is.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I read the book, but I heard an interview with her. And basically, she said there were Soviet experiments where they surgically altered people, which is what gave them this, the gray aspect, and made these sort of super fast, tiny manned aircraft. And that's what the UFOs are. And I remember in the interview, and it was like on NPR,
totally absurd.
not like Alex Jones. She was like, I know this sounds crazy, and I didn't get anyone on the record saying this, but this is credible, and
Hey, look, he's like normal looking, except it's a black dude with a Egypt.
Yeah, let me just find the reference, just so we're Annie Jacobson, Area 51.
Penny, what'd you say?
Annie Jacobson. It's a book from 2011.
Here's a 5-minute video with Annie Jacobson, whatever their name is. Oh, maybe not.
Well, much of it is sort of the documented, well-sourced history. It's just like the final chapter of the book, apparently, that gets into the really crazy shit.
Ancient astronauts is the hypothesis.
Paul.
What?
I just posted a link to a part of Bob Lazar's. You know, Bob Lazar is the guy who said he worked like.
Mm-hmm. He was Rogan's interview.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that interview is crazy because, he seemed so like reasonable in everything he was saying.
Yeah.
He seemed like I don't know. Have you seen it?
I think I watched this one. Yeah. It's hard to tell because there's been, by the way, what are they going to do in 30 episodes when Joe Rogan is at, the Nazi number, 1488? What is he? He should have like Bernie Sanders on again for that episode. I don't know. Just something to think about. It's going to happen in a couple months. So
right. Maybe he skips, or maybe he has one of the Weinsteins.
There you go. Yeah. What are they talk about the evolutionary, German. All right, yeah.
And
anyway,
the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on.
Jesse Ventura is running for president.
What
body? Yeah.
This is Jesse Ventura. I was in the special forces. That guy?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
that's
awesome.
Governor of Minnesota.
Why not? Let's just let him do it.
Yeah. He could be our Ross Perot.
There's actually
Trump versus Jesse Ventura. Like, imagine saying that. I don't know, 20 years ago, anything?
Rogan. It's reddit.com/r/videos. It was Joe Rogan recently talked about oh God, what was it? It was so recent, but it was basically, he was talking about all the billionaires getting together. This was like 2006. And Joe Rogan was like doing stand-up, and he said, I think, and he's talking about Bush, mind you. He's like, I think that all the billionaires were like, we're gonna get a dumb guy up there. I think we can get a dumb guy elected. And they're like, no, they'll never elect it. And then they elect him. And at the end of the joke, like after the punchline, part of the like just, wind down for an extra little punchline is he just goes, you just know there was a guy in the background, some mega billionaire in the back just going, we can go dumber. And that's us now. That's the current. Like he literally predicted. Oh boy. All right.
This is the freakiest one. When I went to the U.S. in 9th grade, my English teacher was talking about the degradation of American culture and pointed to Donald Trump as like the embodiment of that. And not only that, he said on this trajectory, we would end up with like Donald Trump as president.
Well, The Simpsons also predicted.
Yeah.
Donald Trump presidency. Yeah.
Yep. Let me see if I can find this.
Nanoscale bleach particles.
Oh. God, come on. Just come on. And it would be a tremendous amount of, everything's tremendous, the tremendous virus. Why is everything tremendous to him? Does he have another superlative? Like another way to, all right.
He's like always the kid. He's always like the kid who's caught not doing his homework. It's like his default.
I didn't read this. Oh God. 1 sec.
All right, guys, I'm gonna go have some dinner.
All right. See you,
Paymahn.
Take it easy.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, man. Hopefully
How do I pronounce your name?
It's Caio.
Nice to meet you, Caio.
And we'll try it. Next time we do this, we'll try to make sure the subject is more defined, like with the MT. That was pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I like this stuff.
Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, I mean, especially if
I
people
like the philosophical side more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we should you should check out the search Joe Rogan UFO interview. Just
all right, take it easy, guys.
Oh, you want me to search that, or okay?
No, I'm saying Paymahn should do that.
Gotcha.
There's some more Brazil stuff that's going down. If you guys
go for it. What do we want to look at?
Sort of not unlikely that Bolsonaro is going to get impeached.
Ooh.
I don't know if you guys heard about this at all.
What do you do?
It's not so well.
Petit chow.
It's not so much what he did to get impeached as what he did to get people to turn against him, right? So, and I've said this before, like the merits of Bolsonaro are not him so much as his chosen ministers, right? In very rough terms,
that guy, right?
What?
He's some guy he fired, right?
He
was really competent.
Yeah. So what we actually have is sort of a three. The population is very roughly divided in thirds politically, with 1/3 being very solidly left, 1/3 being sort of Bolsonaro diehards, and 1/3 being sort of the centrists, right? And Bolsonaro had a lot of support among the centrists because of his ministers, right? It's like, and this is what I hear from a lot of, finance guys, businessmen, that kind of thing. Like, I just wish Bolsonaro would shut up and let his ministers work, right? Because even with COVID, you had that sort of thing where he had a lot of friction with his health minister, who he ended up firing. But his new minister is probably not going to break with the previous with the previous policies of containment. And the biggest name in his cabinet was Sergio Moro, right there in the article. He's the judge responsible for the car wash operation. Operation Car Wash, which is one of the great, success stories in a prosecution of corruption. And really, like, Brazil was so stagnant, and there was a sense that nothing could be done, right? Because, the Supreme Court was sort of in on it, sold out to the corrupt, and so was the executive and Congress, and Operation Car Wash used public opinion they basically leveraged it as a way to like break through a lot of these legal impediments.
Yeah. But the public had to be aware of a particular corruption in order for them to. Is that what you mean? Like, it's like, we're going to investigate.
We talked about this. This is like like Lula, right? It's how they took
Lula was convicted in the car wash investigations.
A lot of other people as well.
Officially, strictly speaking, car wash is about Petrobras, the oil oil company, the mixed state private owned oil company, right? But a lot of things went through Petrobras, and a lot of people went to prison, The Supreme Court stepped in to sort of help certain politicians where they could. But there's a sense that it was a struggle throughout and continues to be, right? Moro is like one of the most popular men in the country by far, right? He like easily top 3. And he was the, one big check on Bolsonaro, which people say, as long as Moro's there, there's not much that Bolsonaro can do.
It's like how we felt about Mattis before he left.
Yeah. And there's been others, and they all leave.
They all leave.
Yeah. Although another thing I argue, which I think is proving right, is that Bolsonaro has very little institutional power.
Yeah, but that can come fast.
It can, but he doesn't even have the support of the military.
Yeah, but all that stuff just takes like one symbolic act. Like that's the thing.
It could.
That's the thing.
That's
that
true.
Like when liberals pair with fascists, they always justify like the policies that they're liking, not seeing sort of the potential fault lines.
Yeah, well, I'd argue that there is the context here is the rest of the political establishment, which is not unfascist, let's say. I mean, because then you have to dig into a little.
Nice double negative you got in there.
Hey, a little bit more.
No, but
to
fascism
what exactly,
is like a really fluid concept, right? I mean,
I know.
Stalin was fascist.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So, for example, so what you had with Lula was a left-wing populist. For example,
corrupt fucker.
What?
Corrupt
fucker.
Yes, very much. But importantly, not only for himself, but for the party, right?
And the international socialist movement.
Also.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense that they were sort of projecting this regional power in Latin America.
The straight up, was it the remnants of the Soviet Union that would have been, or who? Because I know when the Soviet Union existed, the people projecting socialism was just, no.
No, they're
like
basically propping up the Venezuelan regime with money.
Yeah.
And they being the various socialists all around the world, or
and socialist. I need to read up a little more on this, but basically socialist espionage and stuff used the satellite countries to influence the sort of more peripheral countries of the third world, right? So it wouldn't be the KGB in Brazil. It would be the there has been, and this is what I really need to look into a little more deeply. Excuse me. Czech secret police intelligence service apparently had operations in Brazil, as well as Cuba.
Makes sense.
But this we're talking back in the 60s.
So Czechoslovakia. No.
Yeah, at the time, right? And when I talk about Lula, what we're talking about is sort of a reorientation, a new axis of international socialism for Latin America, and a little bit in Africa as well, right?
Hopefully
so
not.
You had the Soviet Union no longer being able to project that power, and really a regional plan to support the left with Brazilian money mainly, right? And there's some of that that went to Venezuela, to Cuba, even to the more moderate leftist parties in Chile. Here we're talking really since Lula's election in 2002, 2003, right? And meanwhile, the domestic policy was of supporting what they called national champions, which were a handful of big companies, including a few state-owned but mostly private, which really was sort of the linchpin of the corruption scheme, because they had these big, especially big government contractors. So it went stuff like, build a port in Cuba, financed by the Brazilian Infrastructure Bank, which the contracts granted to one of these big companies, big Brazilian companies, with sort of political pressure to take the loans, to offer the loans at considering a lower risk than they really represented. Right? And they're not going to get repaid, basically.
Oh, okay. So
like
just
this has already happened.
Money getting sucked out of things.
Yeah. So you had this, moving around of the pieces, using these sort of big players, right? The infrastructure bank, public contracts, and these big companies, mostly private, but also Petrobras. So if we're talking about fascism, and then using
is that fascism? That sounds like good old corruption to me.
Right, yes, but well,
there's definitely a difference between that and fascism, right? Like
maybe fascism would just happen more out in the open, isn't that?
Yeah, that's actually what would happen in fascism.
So that sounds like it's compared to what there
there's
was.
A few
maybe
things in terms of economy. There's some of that sort of public-private partnership, let's say, among big capital and the government.
Yeah, but that's in every country now.
Yes, and well, arguably,
there's literally not a country in the world.
Yeah, well, arguably, fascism kind of
trying to think of one
economic system.
Maybe like
in the mid-20th
Zimbabwe,
century,
like a country that doesn't have a functioning government for some period of time. Maybe they briefly will have no
for
government.
Some period of time,
private.
But
yeah,
as soon as anybody who consolidates power depends on on the money they get from the large corporations to do so.
All right. No, I do understand that there's a sort of directness of that money going into the party coffers to fund political propaganda, to fund political militants, including several that were also sponsored by the government, and the Gramscian march through institutions, right? The sort of ideological takeover of education, for example, is ridiculously advanced. And very specifically, an attempt to appropriate the figure of Getúlio Vargas. Have you guys heard of him?
How do we spell that?
Vargas.
I feel like you may have mentioned him on a previous.
Getulio. Yeah, that's him. So he was the closest we had to a fascist dictator in Brazil.
He looks pretty Italian to me.
I hear he's very missed.
So the thing about him is that he was a populist. It's hard to say, to pin him down as right wing or left wing. But then again, if you go back to the founding documents of fascism, you have sort of a lot of labor movements and welfare as a major component of fascism in the 20s and 30s.
Mussolini was a socialist before he
right. I mean,
fascism was an offshoot.
Yeah, when we say like Nazism is National Socialism, the socialism is not,
Bernie Sanders farmer socialism.
No, but it's also not like it's also not socialism, right? Right. I don't want to get into a discussion of whether Nazism was left wing. I think it's a dumb discussion to have.
That'll always end up in whatever people want to paint it as in this case.
But the idea of right socialism was not ridiculous at the time. Let's put it like that.
Yep.
Right.
Well, and you had Che murdering people.
Well, the idea of right socialism is not unusual now. It's just we don't call it
right.
We're seeing a resurgence. The almost the meme of Nazball. Have you guys heard of this?
Nazism.
I think in the United States, right socialism died with the Great Depression, or became more of a thing with the Great Depression. But then Barry Goldwater, culminating in Reagan, were able to root it out of the country. But I think it's definitely coming back.
It definitely is. So the thing with Vargas is that he actually was very friendly with Mussolini and Hitler. He ended up going to war against the Axis through sort of, there was a lot of pressure from the United States. He did a lot of, he tried to remain neutral. He didn't really want to get involved. Eventually, the Germans bombed, sunk a Brazilian ship, and that's when Brazil went to fight on the side of the Allies. But it was touch and go at the time, and Vargas himself was quite, sympathetic to fascism, and had fascist characteristics himself. And the Brazilian left, including Lula in particular, have for years really been sort of adopting Vargas as sort of their predecessor and a sort of a positive figure, really even to compare Lula to, right? Mm-hmm. So it's it's hard to say that fascism. What?
Who was there before the fascists, so to speak?
Who, Vargas, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, I don't remember. There was a republic at the time, but that's stuff I haven't read for a while.
How long was Vargas in power for?
Here, let me look it up. He was actually elected president after getting ousted as dictator.
But then office for 15 years.
Was this a legitimate election?
It was. That's the worst thing. It was a legitimate election, but he ended up committing suicide while in office.
Oh.
Yeah.
God.
Did he really?
Oh man.
No, he really did.
Oh, okay.
He really did.
This wasn't like an Epstein suicide.
There's like a picture of Epstein.
No. And he was fairly, his power he was losing his grasp on power.
Okay, so he probably,
But
it looks like he embraced developmentalism, which what I can tell reading 2 sentences about it, it sounds like neoliberalism being embraced from the point of view of the country that's getting pillaged by neoliberalism.
Well,
maybe not.
No, neoliberalism, when we talk about development economics, is opening up the economy to foreign capital.
Right.
That's developmental neoliberalism, where when we talk about developmentalism in this other sense, it is really more of a protectionist,
internal
economic nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so like there is, he's not, he is an ambiguous figure, but who was pretty fashy and was, has been embraced by the left recently, in really a coordinated attempt. You see the big leftist outlets really
trying to rewrite history.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, in a way. So, and at the same time, it's tough because it's like, you just kind of get, I just kind of get very whataboutist about everything, because like, okay, Bolsonaro is fairly sympathetic to the Brazilian military dictatorship, but like the left is sympathetic to Cuba, and in incomparable ways, right? Sympathetic in that like literally giving material support to Cuba and making
but what's
some
more dangerous to Brazil?
So that's a good question. I think that depends on the balance of power, and my opinion is that Bolsonaro does not have the institutional support to be.
Hey, Paymahn.
Hey, Paymahn. Does not have the institutional support to be the sort of danger that's being ascribed to him.
Especially with the Moro move.
Especially now with the Moro move, right? That's why sort of, and I said this, or similar things at least, on Tumblr really early after his election, or even before his election, that
that's the Philippines. Okay.
Well, actually, he appointed Moro after his election, so that Moro would be a huge check on him, whether he remained or not in the cabinet. Because what we're seeing now is that, with Moro fired, Moro is now Bolsonaro's enemy, and Moro came out swinging with like some pretty dire accusations of corruption. Which again, in the context of Brazilian politics, I see as Bolsonaro trying to get the same sort of behind-the-scenes power as his adversaries already have, by which I mean the existing political establishment, which is completely rotten.
I feel like
and that's from today.
Are rotten by design.
Today or yesterday, I forget. But so you have things already in motion that might lead to Bolsonaro's impeachment, and basically Bolsonaro does not have the institutional support to resist this, even from the armed forces, which among other things, Bolsonaro's vice president is a general. So if Bolsonaro gets impeached, the armed forces get one of theirs in power, right? Which I'm sure to them is preferable than Bolsonaro, who's a bit of a loose cannon, and who has not been, whose relationship with the military has not been smooth during his presidency. And my main issue is that I think the establishment is it's rotten. It's terrible. It's I think some of the stuff
Why?
that gets
or how so?
All right, well, first of all, the corruption scheme that was going on under Lula and the Workers' Party is not just Lula and the Workers' Party, right? You had much of Congress being in on it. Getting payoffs or getting their own, it's sort of known that different politicians have their niches within national corruption, right? So like there's a thing where Temer, who was Dilma's VP and was president when she was impeached, that his sort of fiefdom were the ports. He got money from his payoffs came from ports. This is just sort of what people say. So it's not just Lula's party, right? I think they had the most ambitious plan for power, but there is this establishment which is very much involved in these corruption schemes. I also think their politics are terrible. Free speech protections are pretty tenuous. I think Brazil needs to be a lot more economically liberal in the sense of neoliberal. Brazil is known for having really heavy taxation, really onerous regulations, extremely
so are we
tight.
Talking about like corporate taxation,
everything. Actually, there's.
If your services are good as a result of that taxation,
they are not.
That's okay.
they are not good. I mean, we have a few.
Nice, but no, it never is.
We have a few sort of decent things, like we have universal health care, which works in some places, sort of, right? For instance, I actually went to try to help.
John of God is a 501(c) or whatever, and for every rape, it's actually a write-off for every.
The cult leader.
Yeah, sorry, Paymahn. He's like a notorious cult leader who finally got. But he's like the mega Jeffrey Epstein of Brazil. Yeah, basically, he's been going on for 30 years, 40 years. He just
basically, and like what we know is that he has raped more women than we can count, and what might be true is that he had like baby farms.
He was making people.
That's like not entirely proven, but not like
outside the realm of what he was doing. Yeah, there are a lot of claims about it.
It's credible enough.
It's reassuring to know that my worst nightmares are not just crazy. They're other people have those horrifying, and then they're like, I'm gonna go do that. I don't have a conscience. I can make some real money off this.
So what services does the Brazilian government provide well? I'm sure there's some.
There are elements of public health that are okay, right? Better than you would expect.
How's infrastructure?
Not great. That's actually the biggest success story so far of Bolsonaro's administration. His infrastructure minister has been.
It's interesting. Fascists tend to be like super MMT about infrastructure investments.
That is true. Although the main focus has been private investment into infrastructure. Historically, Brazil has had tight regulations on private investment in infrastructure that has not been very attractive to foreign capital, for instance, right? And it's terrible because it's stuff like, you know, basically everything runs on trucks, and the roads are not that great. So we have like, just lines of trucks moving into ports, which are also deficient, you know, you know, a heavy rain can basically make a highway impassable. So,
that's the weird thing about building infrastructure in that part of the world, right? Like with jungles. First of all, you can only build infrastructure for half of the year.
It's not all, but it's not all jungle, right? We're also talking about a lot of places where it's not jungle, and you know, we could have trains. We don't have trains because.
That's true. Wait, you guys don't have any, or?
We have some, but very, very little.
Very few.
Very little. We could have so much more.
Yeah.
Obama replaces the costly high-speed rail program with the high-speed bus program. Have you seen this? This is the Onion. Oh, these are the good old days.
President Obama has changes to his proposed recovery.
That's interesting, though.
National high-speed rail plan.
So, what kind of infrastructure investments has Bolsonaro made?
Buses which cruise at speeds of up to 165 miles per hour will save.
There you go.
Well, the sort of short-term investments so far.
I needed to show that clip.
Wait, what? I didn't see. Wait, can you show that again? I didn't
Sorry, sure, yeah. One sec. Check this out. High-speed bus. And those are the buses. They just have it stuck on the front of like a coach bus, and then they show the Sorry. I fucking love Liberian so much. Oh god. Okay, sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
All right. So the relatively short-term successes have been roads, highways, sort of finishing some things that have been languishing for a long time. That's the stuff that gets done in the short term. But I haven't followed it very closely.
Longer-term process? Okay.
But longer term, we have rail being some of the most important investments being made, as well as port infrastructure.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's
port infrastructure, especially for where you guys are located.
It's very deficient. Yeah. I have a friend of the family who's in transportation, and he says basically like truckers can wait days to get their goods into port, just because the infrastructure is so deficient. They can only process so many trucks at a time. So yeah, there's a lot of really.
So why is the Brazil's infrastructure been allowed to degrade to this point? Is it a lack of resources? Because you guys have been making. Seems like you've had the money to make a lot of other types.
No, we have. What Bolsonaro's economics minister says is that, you know, we spend one Marshall Plan per year in sovereign debt interest every year. Yeah,
sovereign debt.
Right. Yeah,
like your own, like to who? It's held by by other countries.
No, well, bonds.
Yeah, but held by are you like talking about buying American bonds or Brazilian bonds?
No, Brazilian bonds issued. Bonds issued by the Brazilian government.
Okay.
Right. And Brazilian interest rates historically have been very high, which is a way of maintaining the real's value against foreign currencies. And this is actually probably the main reason why the real has been very devalued in the past year.
Why? You guys dropped interest rates?
Yes. And as such, a lot of money is flowing out from financial investments, which is probably good in the long term because this is not an investment. Right.
You mean like rich people just getting a shit ton of money from the government?
Basically. And you know, I have family investments. My parents, my dad does, so I follow that. You know, not like some enormous amount, but enough that we like have, you know, work with a. So we have financial advisors. We have a fund or an investment bank that we work with. It's changed.
So a Marshall Plan a year and interest.
Yeah, and it checks out. I've done the math. It's
so like what percentage of the budget are we talking about? And what is it as a percentage?
A lot. I don't want to. It's been a while since I've looked into this, but not little.
I mean, you know, that's crazy.
Yeah. So, and that's what Gedges says. That's Guedes. He's made this speech in English as well. If you search for him in Marshall Plan, you'll probably see that because that's a big like talking point that he says. And so he says, you know, we should be able to modernize, you know, our economy, our infrastructure with this money, right? If we have it, if we are already spending it, and this,
What other impacts has the capital flight had?
This is as far as I know, this is the big one, right? But like I was saying, like just in terms of, you know, what the experience I have with it is that like we had particular investments that had really fairly good yields and were also federally insured up to pretty high amounts, right? So really it's kind of an investor's paradise.
Just because the low risk, right? It was
low risk, high,
literally
low
federally
risk, high
insured.
return. Like federally insured and getting what, like 7+% a year or something?
More. No, we're talking like 12.
Jesus Christ.
12 to 15.
Oh my God. That is so corrupt. That is incredibly corrupt.
That sounds like not loan shark. That sounds like
no. Well, the thing is,
this sounds like fascism.
Oh well.
The thing is that it's a policy designed to hold back inflation, historically at least.
Yeah, does that make any sense to anyone?
I don't know.
Holding back inflation
by giving rich people money.
Oh no, it
doesn't. Well, and there's also the point that you know, Brazilian there's some risk in Brazilian bonds, so you know.
Back then, sure, yeah.
Increasing the
raise money,
the interest rate, you know, and Argentina has fucked itself over multiple times in this regard, right? And you know, we've managed to hold it steady. But
all right, I'm gonna dial off, guys. I'll talk to you guys.
Onward, upward, Paymahn. I know. I feel like you were left out here at the end. All right.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll do this again, and I'll hear more from you.
Yeah, I feel like when we do this sort of geopolitical stuff, if we're more explicit in the beginning, so people can do their individual research, then it's more.
We should make sure we tell them beforehand. Yeah.
All right, take it easy.
All right.
See you,
bye-bye. and the Workers' Party government really screwed the country in increasing spending during boom times.
Yeah.
So that when the recession hit in, I think it was 2015, it was really rough. And
was there austerity?
Well, eventually we had to, right? There wasn't really much of a choice, and they tried to run on. Well, actually,
fumes.
They managed to forestall the recession enough for Dilma to get reelected, but then it hit, and that's why she got impeached, basically.
Okay, yeah.
Right, so that's why when I say about Bolsonaro's impeachment, it isn't so much what he did, but whether the public has turned against him to the point where, because it's, you know, let's be real, you can find something, right? There was enough on Lula, there was enough on Dilma before 2015, and there is enough on Bolsonaro. So
it's often, is it public opinion and stuff that ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally a political process, right?
Yeah.
So it's you know, what Congress can get away with to some extent. You know, the coalitions within Congress, which would decide, and Congress is gunning for Bolsonaro without a doubt. And so the real question really is public opinion, right? And with Moro being fired, that might be decisive for Bolsonaro, right? Especially because the economic numbers for last year were not great.
Yeah,
they were okay, but Guedes, the economics minister, he was promising a lot better results with the dollar, you know, very high, and GDP not you know, really growing as much as, you know, anyone had hoped. That really didn't happen. I mean, the big thing that I think I've mentioned before is crime. You know, we had like a 22% reduction across the board in crime, including murder, which is significant.
That's good in Brazil, yeah.
No, it's huge.
It's like New York in the 70s versus now, or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, no, 90s. It's huge. It's huge because
that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, we had like over 60,000 murders a year.
Jesus.
Yeah, at the highest.
Dude, Brazil's pretty metal.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's terrible. It's really bad.
Yeah.
Right.
That sounds like ripe for fascism.
Yeah.
And like that's the environment that you get, you know, the expression and so forth.
We need a strong leader to come in and seize the reins.
But here's the thing, like I think
those darkies a lesson.
Oh,
well,
that in Brazil, that's what they're saying.
Yes.
That's probably what they're.
Well,
Brazil,
it's complicated because although you don't have a lot of Black people who are rich or upper middle class, you know,
there's
demographically speaking, there's a lot of white and mixed race people in the lower classes.
Right.
Yeah.
So racism is a little more complicated here than that. Not that there isn't.
I mean, it has to be. I can't imagine. Like, there's just so many.
Got all them octoroons and stuff, right?
Well, see, that's the thing. We call them sort of brown, basically. The term is, that's an official you know,
mulatto or something. Yeah.
We use mulatto. That's not a slur in Brazil, but it's not official. The official term for part Black people is pardo, which is basically brown. Let me see, like. It's sort of
it means brown, but the direct translation is brown devil. That's
see. Yeah, no, it's just brown, maybe dun, right?
Wait, no.
No, it's literally a color, right? It's a color. It's a word for a color.
It's not like well done, medium rare. You don't have that would be.
No, it's an official designation. You actually have, and this is kind of sometimes you get some bullshit statistics from this because you have two demographic designations. You have preto and you have negro.
Ooh.
Both of them literally mean black.
Oh.
But in the demographic
the second one I knew.
but in the demographic designations, negro means both preto and pardo, that is brown and black.
Okay.
Even though they both literally mean black. While preto means, strictly speaking, dark-skinned black people, right?
Okay.
The ones they brought as slaves.
That is how they got in the Americas, yeah.
Who today still remain dark-skinned, right? Because a lot of what we call brown are mixed race with Africans, right? It's not like in the U.S. where brown, a lot of what you call brown is South Asians or Latin Americans.
So straight up black people in Brazil probably of African, more recent African descent.
Yeah, and
very little more recent. I think you just get sort of pockets of populations that did not
interbreed, didn't mix.
Yeah, historically.
Whereas in the U.S., you essentially have nobody who is from slave ancestry and is 100% African ancestry.
Yeah, well, that's also largely true of Brazil.
Okay. Where most people are mixed, but it sounds like there's still.
But there's the black, the preto group. That's a pretty small group. We're talking 10 to 15% of the population.
Okay.
Right.
It's pretty substantial.
That's bigger than I thought.
Yeah, it's like black people in America.
10 to 15, but there's only 13% at all.
But a lot of what you call, I don't know exactly how to make this comparison. To be honest,
it sounds like what you were saying, which was it's complicated, right?
It's complicated. It doesn't map perfectly onto the American.
Just wait until you start having like up and coming Nigerian businessmen show up.
Oh yeah,
and then everybody's gonna get confused. Friend of mine is taking the Harvard Extension School. You might know her.
All Nigerians.
And no, the one guy who beat her. I mean, she's Asian, and she beat a bunch of Chinese guys. And then the one dude who beat her was like Double. He was. I looked up the name, and it was Nigerian. Yeah.
Dude, it's wild. It's wild.
His program took 6 seconds with an indexed list. Hers took 8, and then Pang, the Chinese kid Pang, took like 22 seconds. So he was the next person below. Basically, she was anyway.
I don't get why Nigeria specifically. It's so random. It doesn't make any sense that I don't.
What? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe just the ones. There's somehow ones leaving.
It's not like Nigerian culture particularly lends itself to successful engineers and doctors or whatever. I mean,
is there some reason that the only ones who'd be leaving are the elite, or the ones who are already doing well in school there are the ones who are
that's true, but that's true for a lot of other African countries, right? So I don't get why Nigeria specific. And it's interesting. My sister worked at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and she told me that this is a pretty common phenomenon in corporate America, where they try to meet their diversity quotas by getting Africans, because the Africans who come here are the creme de la creme, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah. So you'll notice that a lot of large consulting firms, large accounting firms and stuff like that, a lot of the black people there are Africans.
Gotta tell them they gotta buy local. That's it. But you can't just import this shit from all the way across the ocean. Yeah.
Watch me. So it's kind of interesting.
Gotta meet our quota. That is literally what's going on there. That's
No, yeah. I mean, Apple literally has like a diversity quota. It just doesn't make any sense to me how that's a thing. Like, I mean, we're like, who?
So much of adult life doesn't, though. So I'm fine.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So I've been reading a lot about Liberian history because I told you this, Paul, but my dad wants me to write. Like he actually like made the outline. It's a book he's always wanted to write for his entire life, but has not had the opportunity to. And so he like gave me this outline for this book that's for the economic history of Liberia.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been like doing a lot of reading to sort of like build an adequate background knowledge to be able to write the book.
Okay, that's why you were. I was wondering. Yeah, you seemed like the last like few weeks you read like 6 different Liberian history books. You were telling me about them all at once. That dude with the top hat. There's some dude with a top hat who.
Yeah, that was the president, and because Liberia became like the major source for rubber for the United States, going in like 1941, based on investments that were made like 15 years earlier. So that guy was the guy who was president when all the like work that had been done for decades to like tie the United States to Liberia economically. That guy became president when all of it sort of came to fruition. And and then he became a dictator for 27 years. And,
oh, wonderful. The rubber dictator.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting because
he who controls the rubber controls.
And like in 1931, the budget for the government at that point was $1.3 million.
Okay.
And then in 1944, it was 12.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, so it's just like all the work that had been put in and like setting up financial ties with the U.S., getting people to come in and like evaluate different assets the country had. He came into power and all of that just like swelled at the same time. And he was also really, he wore the top hat. You know, he really.
What's his name again?
William Tubman.
Right.
I feel like
Tubman.
Well, he really embodied the sort of Negroes from the West going to Africa to spread the light of Christianity and civilization. He really embodied that part well, and it played well. Like the Western leaders really liked him. The Queen of England really liked him. So in addition to like the moneyed interest, there was like a personality thing. And he was also the kind of guy who tried to. He tried to fuck all his ministers' wives.
Hey, these two have something in common then. Kennedy and that's JFK. He's like, hey, you also like to fuck all your ministers' wives?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting history. And
oh boy.
He hated Jews, communists. He hated Jews, communists, Jews and communists.
Jews and communists or Jewish communists?
Yes, Jews and communists.
All right.
He's very anti-USSR. He's a smart guy.
He's a Freemason.
He was a Freemason. Freemasons are huge in Liberia back then.
Wait. Oh, okay. I guess. All right. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Various power inequalities.
It's just crazy, though, when you hear, like, when you read the actual history, the people who came here initially were like kind of nuts.
There's a
like. Oh, by the way, fairly probable that Moro is a Freemason.
Oh,
since we're on the subject.
Marvelous. More international ties to.
Yeah, there's hold on, let me just.
There's a Edwin. While you mentioned it, that there's a Joe Rogan bit where he talks about the they didn't have YouTube videos to watch when they came to America. They just got on a boat They're just like, we're doing it, man. We're just going to America. We got a Bible. That's it. We're just.
If you could just open that link real quick.
All right, here we go.
So that's him on the far right. That's a wedding of sort of a.
That's the Eye of Providence, right?
Yeah.
Or is that the Eye of Horus? I don't know. One of those.
I think it's the same thing. The all-seeing eye.
The same.
I think,
yeah. Okay.
I think
one's the more Egyptian-y one, I think, but maybe maybe okay, that's straight up. Isn't that one of the? What's that? Is that some Brazilian thing? I don't think that's.
I'm not sure. No, but this is a Masonic lodge.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a wedding of like. This is like a public picture of like the woman is a politician, sort of political ally of his, and he was the what would you call it? Sort of the best man or something. And well, that's him right there on the far right. Just
on the far right
nothing.
Of the picture.
Of the picture.
Yeah.
Just apropos of nothing.
Back in the day, you couldn't be in Liberian politics without being a Mason.
I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, like it's like being part of the church.
Yeah.
Seems to be any situations that follow a period of extreme secret policing, those will tend to be like, because the secret policing will weed out any groups that aren't hardened against infiltration. Those groups will get dissolved or become weakened very quickly. But then a Freemason type group, if they got little handshakes and the paddles and all the weird stuff, then you can prevent new members who are infiltrating from some secret police or some bullshit. They want to politically manipulate it. So then when the revolution comes, it's sort of after the jackbooted period, the Freemasons are just like, hey, we're the only ones left standing in power. That's and so that just happened repeatedly. Revolutionary War. It's it's their funky little handshakes in there. And maybe killing a goat over an open pit, maybe that gives you magic powers. That could also be it. Sure, why not? But anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting story about the first time a president was overthrown in Liberia.
Oh boy.
So this guy named E.J. Roy was president in 1872. And when he was president, he went to the U.S. to take out a loan on behalf of the Liberian government.
Mm-hmm.
He did it without the approval of the legislature.
Fuck.
And then came back and all the money wasn't there. So, and, I mean, and think about it. This is in 1820, middle of West Africa,
he had a violent death.
No, my point is, in 1822, these people show up in the middle of West Africa. There's a Sierra Leonean trading post the British have set up. But, they're like little towns, but there's nothing resembling infrastructure,
right.
So these people are coming in 1821, right? And then 50 years later, they don't get a lot of support from the U.S. because, the U.S. is split on the race question. I mean, the only support was through private philanthropists, the American Colonization Society. So, you're not talking about a very complex society at that point. You're just talking about a bunch of farmers. And this guy hops on a ship, goes to America, takes the money, comes back, and basically, they show up to his house with their shotguns.
And just, do they end up swiping it?
They went after him. He ran away and drowned trying to get on another
ship. Subsequent violent
shit.
Death, it says. Yeah. His death, no specific historical record is available about the date and circumstances of his death. Varying accounts indicate he was killed, blah, blah, blah. Another account suggests he drowned on February 12th, 1872, while trying to reach a British ship in Monrovia Harbor. The portrait notes his date of death is February 11th. So nobody really knows exactly when he died, but it was somewhere around the February 11th or 12th of 1872. That was in Deadwood. They had it was because gold apparently had been discovered in Liberia or something like that, and they had the guy
really rich in different minerals and resources.
Sometimes that's a good thing to be. Sometimes not so much. It's like if you're hot and smart, then that sounds great. But if you're hot and dumb and prone to being, manipulated,
it depends on it depends on the president you have at the time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So like, you know, like one of our best presidents was the president during the Great Depression.
Right, that was global. Yeah.
Yeah, but we just took out like a loan from Firestone for $5 million.
This was during the Great Depression or right before it?
In 1926.
Oh. So
I told you the government's budget was 1.3 million a year at that point.
Oh, so tiny.
Dude, think about the size of this country. You're talking about like maybe like 20,000 people from the U.S. show up and then try to build a country in the middle of Africa.
Yeah.
And think about just and you know, show up over the course of like 40 years. So like just think about like surveying, traveling, like getting the different tribes on board. Like there were a bunch of different wars with the different tribes. They were fighting among themselves. And it's not like they had a lot of money from other countries coming in. But yeah, so he was a really good president because, you know, like think about Liberia defaulting in the 1920s and what that would mean for a country of that size.
Did that happen?
Well, no, because he was able to balance. They basically like cut the budget in more than half. Like civil servants weren't getting paid. A lot of shit shut down, and obviously like that
cutting wages in half, using just 50. Stop. So this is specifically Firestone you're talking about, or
no? The president was Edwin Barclay.
Depriving the Liberian government of tax incomes. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
So Frank FDR. Oh. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, he became good friends with FDR later, but the point is that you know, you have like a really precarious situation where the country is indebted to an American corporation, and if you don't play your cards right, you probably default and you lose, you know, so much revenues that you need. So you need to cut down, you know, especially in a small state where so many people depend on the state for their survival. You're talking about maintaining power while cutting down state funding, you know, by like 50-60% over the course of several years, making sure they don't develop and making sure there isn't any sort of revolution. And he did it.
Wow.
Now, if you had somebody like that in power, when you go from 1.3 million, go down to like, you know, 400,000 or whatever, but then shortly after you get to 12 million a year, right? Think about what more you can do in terms of infrastructure, education, curing diseases like polio, and a whole bunch of different things you can do. But you don't have that guy. You have the guy who wants to fuck everybody's wife. Power. You know,
you have your
the good
Trump.
times are on. Yeah, basically. So like that, and that's just sort of the resource curse thing, because Firestone, like they came in, they like, you know, built a port, like they set up some infrastructure to be able to like take out the rubber.
Yeah.
So that made it easier, since the United States was already investing in Liberia, be like, okay, we're just gonna do more investments. Like the president got the FDR administration, and like when he went to America, he was like well received, which is like kind of weird for a black dude in the 1950s or late 1940s. Yeah. But he was like, you know, because he played the part, you know, wearing the top hat, he's going to civilize the savages in Africa and Christian and bring them to civilization. But they brought like people to do a lot of agricultural assessment, to think about the different types of agricultural techniques that they could teach the natives to make them more productive. Just like a survey of all the different mining, or like the survey wasn't even as comprehensive as it could have been, but all the different like resources the society had. You know, you think about stuff like that, just like having the relationships in place to be able to survey what the actual productive capacity of a country is. That's something that you wouldn't even think about as the roadblock for a country exploiting its natural resources, but that was. you know, in the
That's
19th.
probably often why it's foreign interests, because they have the investment, the initial capital to go and means of just showing up and saying, "Ooh, how much, you know, gold ore is in what have you."
Right. But depending on, you know, where
Easily
you are.
enslaved locals and that sort of thing. You know, how they thought, oh yes, yeah, if we
so that was
make up
so
a deity.
the problem with slavery is just so interesting in the Liberian context, because like domestic slavery was totally a thing.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't chattel slavery, but it was domestic slavery.
You'd have like someone a lower on the native totem pole than you, right? You just have them chained up, and then that was your family slave. And then there was they do stuff like that in the Congo. That's why I don't actually know anything about Liberia's slavery.
No, but that's basically it. And like they had to the Liberian government eradicated it, but they did so like they paid people for their
called
slaves.
Liberia. I mean, it would be weird if they still.
Yeah, but it wasn't like the country wasn't only, you know, African Americans.
Right. Yeah, but they were, if anything, they were the ones doing the enslaving, right? And they.
No, they didn't. Like, okay, so what would happen?
Okay.
Yeah, but
they
didn't like. It was weird. So it wasn't like chattel slavery where you were just like buying slaves, and it was more like the native people were like, oh, you know, have my kid come stay with you. You know, they'll have access to better education, blah blah blah. And then some people would just take advantage of that.
Well, that's like
the labor.
That's like
right. That was more what it was like.
Well, this was really common in Brazil. The idea that just, you know, a rich family would just sort of adopt the children of a poor family, but adopt in the sense that they would go as servants, basically.
Servants, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's one of those things where it's like, and it's always iffy when you argue about it. Make a favorable claim about it because everyone's like, you're supporting, but like it's one of those things where the failure modes are horrifying. But the thing itself, the bulk of the thing itself, had lots of very real benefits. Like to be like the apprentice of someone, you
given the circumstances,
to death by them, but you were the apprentice, right? I mean, but you're now
given the circumstances, there are worse systems.
Oh yeah,
right.
It's usually a system going from a worse one into, and you're like, whew.
It's in a sense. Redistributive, but in a very like interpersonal, like based in interpersonal connections, right? It's like I just doing research for this book I'm writing.
Everyone's writing books.
It's a story of a person. I'm not going to get too much into it, but like she was like in that sort of relationship when she was a girl. She was sort of adopted by a rich family as a servant so that she could go to school because she lived on a farm. Her family lives on a farm. But basically, I went to visit this family today, and they don't have, first of all, they adopted like 40 kids in this way over a great many years, right?
Wow.
Or something like that. And the heir to the family, they didn't have any like blood heirs. So one of those kids ended up being like the heir to that
that's
family,
redistributed.
which is not rich anymore. And even when it was really only in the context of this very small town. But like, but still, like, you know, it's very ambiguous kind of relationships, you know, where you really have a range of possibilities.
Yeah, it just depends on the personality of the people. And how they treat. And it's weird because, you know, like my dad, my family came to Liberia, I think in the 1870s. It was after the Civil War. Like the Carries, where we're from, it's called Carysburg. But like the culture, so because you have to understand, like the people who came to Liberia they were religious zealots also.
Yeah.
Kind of,
oh yeah.
There's that.
That's
it's kind of
all of human history.
It's like if you're gonna imitate America, you might as well really, go for it.
Go all out.
But it was really about like civilized or Christianizing the natives, and so like they saw their culture as demonic, literally.
Yeah.
And good reasons, right? Like,
were they eating people? Because I mean, when you come across that, you're like, there's the Jesus freaks or there's the eating people. I like the Jesus freaks way more than the eating people.
Way more, because like part of their war, and it was just like a fear tactic, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like some of the people in the tribe would sharpen their teeth, just so you know that like, if there's a war and you attack us, we will literally eat you.
That's some eating people. Was a one-eyed, one-horned, flying purple. All right.
Yeah. So there's definitely like, and like just depending on how you do a lot of things, there's definitely, and there were also just a lot of practices that weren't like super like fucked up, just like, I'm sure there was something, there's like the story of this group of people who would capture children and eat their liver.
Just the liver. That seems wasteful.
For some sort of like rights. It's like the the people who catch
oh shit.
What's the name of in Uganda or Tanzania? They take where they don't have skin pigment, albinos.
Oh god.
Capture albinos and chop off their limbs because they're supposed to help them make magic.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's always like one like random. It would always be like a couple of random tribes over here that just like went way off the rails and just got really into this one thing. It's not all necessarily always like. Like
right. It's an unsustainable waves. That's anthropologists document this sort of thing. The interesting thing though is the other trend in the other direction is they'll find a tribe that's really peaceful and sweet, and the women kind of run a lot of stuff, and they're like, oh, this is the optimal human. Those ones don't last either. Those ones get fucking wiped out by the psychos. It's a constant oscillation. Yeah. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
And Steve Saylor has this whole thing about pygmies, right?
Oh, sorry. Who's that? I don't know who that is.
yeah. I guess I just heard about this one.
Saylor. Yeah, this guy. It's just this internet blogger. But anyway, Steve Saylor, pygmies.
Yep. Literally the only thing I know about him, of course, is that he's all about pygmy rights. Well, there's also that.
Shit. Oh my god.
I was referring specifically to how he brings up.
Is that how? Here's the thing. Oh no. He's talking about the fact that they don't get UN protections because they can't even be designated as a separate ethnic group, which they should be because they're getting eaten. They're literally getting hunted and eaten like animals by the locals.
Where?
And it would be great. In
Where?
I think it's in the Congo. Pygmies in the Congo.
Jesus.
The Baka pygmies are hunted down and eaten regularly. Yeah. It's Jesus really bad. Christ. And so if the UN were able to get over its fucking PC high horse and say, oh yes, these are a distinct, separate ethnic group that deserves protection as a separate ethnic group, then that would be, I love the headline.
I'm not sure how you enforce, how do you even enforce that kind of shit in the middle of the Congo? Like, is that a thing that, like,
I mean,
there's
the UN managed.
No?
Well, the UN managed to do to at least insofar as it was on the ground to hold back some of the genocide in, I think, Rwanda.
Yeah, but that was in a city center. Like most of the genocide happened
in city
centers, jungles and stuff, or.
I guess it wasn't like in the bush, right? It was.
I mean, I think the majority of the genocide happened, like. In the
yeah. Like it was probably not in the bush. You're right.
And like Paul Kagame, who I think is like one of the badass leaders of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Have you guys heard his story?
Okay.
No, not at all.
Oh yeah, go ahead. We'll just
go ahead. What were you saying?
Quickly, my point about this just being that like even lightly armed UN peacekeepers can go a long way in protecting people. But that was really only the point. The only point.
I guess what I'm thinking about is just like getting around.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Paul, you were going to say
something? You were talking about Kagame?
Oh,
no, Paul, what are
okay.
you saying?
Well, so what you could do is a lot of this Congo conflict stuff is driven by the fact that there's cobalt, coltan, minerals. Those are all being bought by Western European or U.S. corporations that could be punished and linked to, hey, there's
is that a good idea?
There's a lot of murder. There's specifically a designated ethnic groups getting murdered. Then you can bring in all these extra protections that were. Like,
my sense is that this has worked for a lot of things. However, you have China going in there.
They wouldn't. China would just be like,
they don't care at all.
I have no idea. What are you sanction? Like, go away.
But my sense is that the approach does work for Western corporations.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, all this paperwork I got to fill out just to say that yes, we don't have any cobalt in our
If any country could come in and calm things down in the Congo, it would be China.
Well,
and I would be. I would be okay with whatever it means.
Yeah, they would have no qualms about like just being straightforwardly imperialistic.
Yep.
Put troops on the ground, whatever.
That's what is required to like have a state, right?
Yeah.
Like, in order to have a state, you have to have violence against people who aren't really in a context to live under a state, essentially.
I have a friend.
I think I've accepted that more as I read about Liberia and the specific challenges that the government then had to deal with to actually establish a state. It's a really messy process.
I have a friend who's in sort of the UN NGO circuit, and he worked in sort of conflict mediation in like Sudan and shit. And he said like some of these regions that like they are fucked for the foreseeable future. There's nothing to be done. Right. Except maybe, Chinese imperialism, I guess.
Well, yeah, but if they
he didn't say that, but we're talking about this. So.
You are China now.
If the One Belt and Road can actually link Ethiopia to Kenya in a substantial way, and the rest of Central Africa, and hopefully like eventually you can link up Lagos and some of the Western African states, like that might take decades to do, but I don't care if it's Chinese imperialism. Like we'll deal with the ramifications of that if you can get that infrastructure in place.
I should try to get him on the podcast. I wonder if he'd do it.
That'd be interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, he's doing some shady work in Pakistan now.
In Pakistan?
Yeah.
Is there any other kind of work that you can do in Pakistan?
And for the British government, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds shady still, but
but it might be interesting for him to talk about some of his past experiences.
I'm gonna hit him up, see if he's voting rights.
What?
I feel like I want to have a conversation about some of these realities with somebody who's like an actual SJW.
Yes, like let's crush them.
Like, yo, I support Bernie Sanders, but
So, well, you guys think that would be interesting? I could hit him up.
Oh, for sure, yeah,
definitely do it. Yeah. Cool. I support Bernie Sanders, but also my pronouns are His Majesty. All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to wrap it up? Or
I wonder if you could.
There's more. Keep going.
Caio, I feel like you and I have a pretty interesting perspective here. Just like
I think so too.
Really, you do. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the Liberian case is so interesting, and I know very little about it, and I'm always fascinated
Well,
hear
it's
you
just
talk about it.
it's kind of cool that, especially that I'm doing this research, because I feel like there are things I'm learning that there are probably like 10 people in the entire world know.
Yeah, I get it.
Like for example, did you know that Abraham Lincoln tried to give the Liberian government to use gunboat in 1861, and Congress didn't accept
Really?
it? Yeah. A random.
Lincoln gunboat.
Oh, so just very tangential to what you're saying. But one thing that happened just yesterday is that the Brazilian Congress wanted to, regulate the profession of historian.
Oh God!
Which, among other things, would require you to have a degree or something like it to be a historian, which is not like very clear what that means.
I would vote for Bolsonaro if like
he vetoed it.
Oh my God, that's scary as fuck.
He vetoed it, but
okay, I get it.
So,
I get it.
Yeah. So maybe like he is certain libertarian things in that sense are like,
but that's huge. That's free speech.
Yeah, I know.
Can I just really quick, the Lincoln thing, I'm reading, this is Lincoln's words. I solicit your authority to furnish to the Republic a gunboat at moderate cost to be reimbursed to the United States by installments. Such a vessel is needed for the safety of that state against the native African races.
That's correct.
Well,
but also more importantly against like British and French encroachment.
Gotcha.
Okay. Gobble up their territory.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
The internet reactionaries are really into Liberia, but
they are.
But
they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
I have no context for it.
Well, they're always just like, well, see, at least the mixed black people went there and they had things going well, but then the darkies took over and it all went to shit. That's that's the narrative, and it's like so reductive that it's like hard to even wrap my head around. But yeah, there is a problem with stupid people having too much power. There is that, but it's not primarily about natives. It's the Americo-Liberians set up this like ridiculous oligarchy where like 12 families ruled the country essentially.
Hey, Russia's got that.
Sustainable.
So just to go back quickly on the free speech thing, because there's another just like anecdote that's really illustrative. There was one study by a couple of academics about lesbocide. Brazilian academics are really into appending "side" to words like femicide.
Lesbians?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like femicide is really big in government in general and shit. Anyway, so they really sort of equivocate on the meaning of it between like a lesbian being murdered versus a lesbian being murdered for being a lesbian, right? Or even, as in the case of some studies, suicide being included in
lesbicide?
In sorts of in these sorts of statistics.
Because you're
but they're not very clear about it, right? They fudge the definition.
Yeah.
So basically, like there are like 2 or 3 groups that tally these numbers, and they have the same methodological issues with respect to this sort of thing. Like every violent death is presumed to be in some to be because of prejudice in some sense, even like if that's not
whereas
if there's no indication of that whatsoever.
The opposite extreme is when the only thing you designate lesbicide is when someone is murdered in the midst of lesbian sex. That is the only. There's a spectrum, and it's at the other end. It's all cases of someone presumed to be lesbian,
right.
in any way. And then at the other end, you have to be suffocated while getting face scissored. That's
but anyway, the particular anecdote I was going to tell is that so this study came out by two academics, if I recall, that had these particular numbers. And by the way, like they always like throw out the absolute numbers, and when you compare it to sort of the total number of murders in the country, they're not usually unrepresentative. They're actually often below the proportion that you would expect. But in any case, they put out the study. This guy, like internet anon guy, dug into it and he made a blog just detailing a bunch of methodological issues and particular cases that he identified that were sort of like, okay, this one was murdered by her girlfriend. This one actually was in a car accident and not murdered at all. And this one was murdered by the police, was killed by the police fleeing a crime scene.
Right.
And there was,
the
so just
police were lesbian, and then the other person in the other car, the car was what's that very lesbian car? I forgot. Shit.
It's a lesbian car.
You didn't know this?
I just forget what it is. It's
and they make the engine
is
really
it
hard
Volvo?
to reach and stuff. It's Subaru.
Subaru. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
It's like literally. Anyway, go ahead. If you have a
wow,
Subaru, you don't
I did not know that.
That's some comedian said that.
It's a thing. It's
a Subaru.
It's a
I
stereotype.
don't need to see any bumper stickers.
But anyway, this guy, he put up a blog. He tried to, go to public events and stuff to question this study, and very well documented. He's like, oh, okay, this comes from this news report here, very thoroughly documented. He was sued by the authors of the study, and they won.
What?
He ended up winning on appeal. But
wait, but how does that? What is winning even? Defamation?
Something like that. Yeah.
But how does that?
Pointed out methodological.
Wait.
Yeah, no, it's retarded. I mean, like, because he might have called them frauds or something. But the sentence was
probably not the best peer review technique.
Yeah, jeez.
But no, but it wasn't just like take down. It's in Brazil. It's lesbocide that they use.
I really hope the left in the U.S. doesn't turn in this direction, because that's like what Elizabeth Warren represents.
Yeah,
she was talking about all this like
and
censoring although social media is becoming increasingly censored. If you
it's rough.
Like, holy shit, it's rough.
There's some really dumb shit that's been happening, but so and it's not like the judge said just like, oh, you can't call them a fraud. The judge was like, you got to take down your whole website.
What?
And all the things that you wrote about them, you got to take it down.
And you got to get rid of the backups that are on other servers that you don't control. That's the judges never understand the friggin'
and just like speech. Like, I don't understand.
It's they can't. I actually read the opinion, and the judge literally said, oh, this is especially important because lesbians are, a vulnerable category, as evidenced by this study.
Oh no!
They can't. What's the term that they used back a while back? It was low or high. Oh fuck, I forget.
Key.
But the ability to separate, the factual from moral questions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And even like people in like judges and shit in Brazil, they have very little ability to like separate a factual question from a moral question, right? Of like, murdering a lesbian for being a lesbian is terrible, but maybe this study is, flawed and this guy is right. This guy is out there telling the truth. The ability to make that, abstract separation is lacking in, a lot of people in academia, in the legal profession, including judges. They just can't. And it's part of the. It's just part of the philosophy where there the sort of social political engagement is a very well accepted.
It's a factor. It's a more important aspect.
Yeah, in sentencing, in rulings and stuff. So.
How old is Brazil as a country?
It went through a lot of different periods. It was discovered in 1500.
I'm saying the nation state of Brazil. How old is it?
Then
it's probably been through multiple iterations that you could consider.
Yeah. You have so the Portuguese royal family fled to Brazil during the Napoleonic Wars.
Okay.
The prince stayed behind and declared independence.
Oh yeah, independence was achieved with the Empire of Brazil in 1822.
Yeah, and then
so it's about as old as Liberia.
Yeah. And then the republic
became a republic
in the 1890s, 1889.
Oh,
yeah, there we go.
So have you heard of the parole evidence rule?
No.
So there's this rule of evidence where, like, if you're examining a contract, if all the parameters for a contract were there before the contract is signed, if one of those parameters is removed somehow after the contract is signed, you can't go and say the contract wasn't valid to begin with. You can say, they breached or whatever, but you can't say, based on this, the contract isn't valid to begin with. Now, judges used to be able to do that. Like, declare contracts not valid based on, like, some little action somebody took after it was signed. And, like, that rule was put in England, I think in the 1400s. I'm not sure exactly when. But the idea was that the judges weren't competent enough. And if left to their own devices, they would do this, for bribes or, for a whole host of other reasons. So there is some history in the law where you tighten up areas for interpretation based on the state of your judiciary, where, if you have younger states, you can imagine that might be more relevant to the immediate needs at the time. And, you can have more loosening as time goes by. So it's interesting that, because there's like common law and civil law. And civil law is more statutory based, and common law is just sort of evolved.
Common law, is that more like this precedent already was set in the past? And okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's the judges rely on what's called stare decisis, which is just like precedent. Whereas, like,
we do not follow common law in Brazil, and it's rough.
Well, yeah, you're Portuguese, so you have civil law. But the point I'm trying to make is that in young states, it's not unusual for judges to behave that way.
And judicial activism is very heavy-handed here. Like, and that's part of the thing. Like, also of what gets reported. For instance, a comedy group put out a Netflix movie making fun of Jesus a few months back, and like Jesus was gay in the movie, whatever. And a judge ordered them to take it down. But like local judges can just do that, right? Like a municipal judge can just do that.
That's their gay Jesus.
Right. Did they appeal?
I mean, the Supreme Court stepped in like immediately and struck it down. And this happens a lot in Brazil. Like, a judge does something, and if it gets that sort of attention, Supreme Court strikes it down. But this is not like, this is done all the time. This is not unusual. I feel like they tried to connect it to Bolsonaro and stuff, but this is a very common kind of occurrence.
Oh my God! Their headquarters of the comedy troupe, was attacked with Molotov cocktails. I told you
that
Edwin,
happened.
Brazil is metal.
That happened too. I believe.
I mean, I guess Liberia, you know.
But no one was in there, and the fire was contained pretty quickly. There was no significant damage. I think it was a fascist group, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, they're called integralists, which is funny.
They're either fascist or they're anarchist. I could see either end of the extreme.
Yeah.
Both of them want to burn shit. One's a little more directed, I suppose. The fashy one is like, I just want to burn your shit. I want my shit to flourish. Right. Burn all this shit.
But yeah, like this this is very common, right? And I feel like this got picked up because it's a right-wing judge censoring sort of a progressive sort of movie. But this is.
Would they just block it in Brazil? I guess. Netflix,
They would order Netflix to take it down in Brazil. Yeah.
So then only we get the gay Jesus. Everyone else. Yeah.
But it's a Brazilian movie. But whatever.
An episode of the Patriot Act. Oh no! Wait, no, that's different. That's different. I thought he did a thing about. Never mind. Hassan Minaj. They're talking about how Netflix took down a different thing, which is that.
Yeah,
Netflix
but that was related to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which we know Saudi Arabia is great and doesn't have any problems, and they definitely weren't keeping slaves in a pit in the basement of like a fancy place in New York City or for anything like that. Saudi princes would never do that. The House of Saud is a wonderful family. They do great stuff. They do a lot of charity work. Definitely no basement pit slaves in the middle of New York City. That's not
very tasteful gold-plated cars.
Literally never do that.
Yeah, they never. Just down the street from Epstein's mansion, which is across the street from Bill Cosby's mansion. But anyway.
Wait, actually?
Yes, it is. It sincerely is. Yes.
Well, dude, remember we were talking about Epstein initially? I was saying there's a chance that he is a Saudi.
Who? Oh, Epstein?
Yeah, it was like it's probably
because
either
he had
like,
that passport, right?
It's Mossad, Mossad, Saudi, or KGB, or the three, or CIA, I suppose.
In that order, and it's one of those cases where the first one is like 99%. But no, I'll accept the other two. Sure, yeah, Anywho.
Please don't kill me.
Yeah, no, I don't want to get. I think Zoom has literally got its headquarters in Tel Aviv, but.
Oh, speaking of which, I guess you're paying for it because this has gone on for more than 40 minutes, right?
Oh yeah, no, I have the basic plan or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah, use it for. That gay Jesus, he just looks stoned. Or is that gay Jesus? Maybe that.
No, I think the one on the left is Jesus. I think right is Mary Magdalene.
Wait. As a dude? All right, that makes sense.
I think I don't know.
Might
I
as
don't
well.
know. Let me take a look because I know the names of the actors.
Oh, there you go. See, getting pissed at something like that, it's so obviously baiting. Just let him. Jesus doesn't care. The guy can take some punishment. That's. Haven't you?
That's okay. That's Orlando or the Devil, the guy in the woman's wig.
Right. Okay.
And the one on the left is Jesus.
That looks like Brazilian Jesus, Brazilian gay Jesus. That guy on the left. I could.
Wow.
Oh boy.
So how likely do you think this impeachment is?
60-40 in more likely than not.
What are those called? The markets for, what are they called? Decision markets. I'm gonna
Prediction
see.
markets
or prediction markets.
Prediction markets.
I wonder if if they
predicted
have
is the
that.
most popular one.
Predicted markets or no?
Predicted, but it's pretty skewed towards like people who are really online. So like Andrew Yang did
predict
really
it.
well.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the first one there, but let's see here. I just want to see.
So who would take power if Bolsonaro
his VP, who is a general?
Ooh, so this is how this happens.
No, I honestly.
Oh boy.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think the armed forces are interested in
taking power,
in any kind of coup. I think they would be happy to have that in, and I think they would expand their political influence. But I would put very, very low odds on an outright coup. Like they're pretty on board with the centrist project.
Okay.
In broad strokes, at least, right?
Right.
Which is basically liberal, sort of lightly progressive.
What I don't get is like Lula comes to power and obviously is able to do all this shit because of all the wealth that's been built over time from neoliberalism.
Mm-hmm.
Like it has its flaws. I mean, even fucking Marx acknowledged how, awesome capitalism can be in terms of just productivity.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you not just like ride off the coattails of that? Like why would you like? Go ahead.
I think there's a sort of hubris involved in it.
Yeah.
They at some point they thought, we can implement literally whatever we want. And sort of very, very bold social spending plus just a lot of siphoning money towards their own pet causes. And I guess that I can only imagine that they thought the growth would
just continue.
Would continue, or they'd be able to pivot to Keynesianism, which they did try with when the recession hit. Sort of Dilma's argument was, now that the recession hit, now is when we have to have counter-cyclical spending.
Yeah, but you're supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, sorry.
No, I know, right?
I mean, like with Brazil's, like you explaining the infrastructure situation to me for Brazil lets me know that Brazil's financial framework isn't advanced enough for them to do something resembling modern monetary theory. Like their system isn't there yet.
Probably not. No.
Yeah, right. But Keynesian theory. I mean, even if you're operating under a balanced budget framework, you still pull that off.
No, you could if you did it. If they had the
if you didn't promise people everything all the time.
Yeah, exactly. If they actually, during boom times would hold back. You had speaking of infrastructure, we hosted the Olympics and the World Cup. Within 2 years of each other, and the World Cup stadiums are languishing. They built these.
It happens like everywhere, though.
Yeah. But you'd imagine, the country of soccer, but no, they always have huge cost overruns. We know that there's corruption involved every time.
Of course.
And
people probably get murdered over that shit.
I mean,
and it's
certainly. I mean, it's like I haven't looked all that closely, but if you want to, talk about various suspicious deaths, that you know are likely ascribable to powerful people. There are plenty.
Yeah. Well, Coca-Cola did that. Didn't they have some murders was it in Brazil? Maybe no. It was in like Southeast
I don't think so. I think it was
Asia.
Central.
What does Coca-Cola
America.
do with all the cocaine?
What is what?
What does Coca-Cola do with all the cocaine?
I don't think
they refine it into cocaine.
They don't have
right?
any.
No, I think they
used to have Coke in it. Yeah.
No, I think they have like. Doesn't their process require like refine it into cocaine and extract?
I don't know.
That would be.
I just know about the coca leaves.
So I heard they like actually like basically refine it into cocaine and then extract something from the cocaine. That
I'll tell you, I do know one thing that is relevant possibly to that, which is that there's various trade secrets about what goes into Coca-Cola, the product, and like they won't even let all the people who know those secrets like on the same flight together. And well, there's.
And I'd also believe that they would
lost
have some sort of special dispensation to handle cocaine if that were the case.
Yeah.
Would be hilarious if Coca-Cola managed to be like the biggest drug lord all this time.
The CEO of Coca-Cola is in that what's the end of Scarface when he's just got the big cocaine and he just gets shot to death in a
They're a pretty good company though. Like they they set up bottling plants in the countries that. I mean, I'm sure they have their problems, but I'm saying like for example, Liberia.
Okay.
Like, they had a bottling plant that hired 500 people here.
That's pretty nice.
And you know, I've said this before, but I think like one great thing about foreign capital investment of this type is that they bring best practices and process management and shit.
That's probably the most valuable thing.
Looks like they moved the plant out last year.
In Liberia,
yeah.
Because
but we definitely have, and also all our
government
Coke
we have is just like think about how shit of a government you have to be for fucking Coca-Cola factory that's been there since like for probably like 70 years or something like that.
Yeah,
they left because the government like whatever. At least the electricity is on
for now.
No, it's actually funny because of the lockdown. There's been more electricity because they got more money for pandemic, and they've just been making sure that the government's been using the money to pay its debts to the Liberian Electrical Corporation because before they weren't paying the Liberian Electrical Corporation like the money that they owed them because they supply all the government buildings and everything. So that shortage has been why the electricity has been like, or at least for the past couple of months was unstable, but now it's just like all day long. I don't have to worry about it, which is fucking like annoying as shit because that shouldn't be happening. It's like a few $1 million. Yeah.
That's a sign that only with a small influx of cash, the whole system works way better.
It's a sign that we can't have stupid people in power.
Well, that we didn't need science for that, but you're right. It's one
Brazil sort of has one of the biggest. Well, it doesn't have. I mean, it's maybe not exactly the right word, but one of the biggest drinks company in the world. InBev, you guys know?
Oh, how do you spell it?
Company, INBEV.
No.
It's headquartered in Belgium, but it was a merger of
Ambev and a Belgian
I forget
company, Interbrew, and Brazilian brewer Ambev.
Yeah, they merged with Kirin at some point. Oh no, it's another Brazilian group that merged with Kirin. But Anheuser-Busch, so they own, there we go, Corona, Leffe, Stella.
And Anheuser-Busch itself is already a merger of Anheuser and Busch. No, maybe not.
And
Grumman, Northrop Grumman used to just be Grumman during the Moon.
Like it's headquartered in Belgium, but the CEO is Brazilian, and so is maybe the chairman of the board. Yeah. So that happened in the last like 20 years, 15 years or so.
This is 2008, right?
Yeah.
Founded in 04, InBev was, and then I guess the merger happened in 08.
So what happened with them?
No, it's just like it's a huge giant at this point.
$52 billion.
Yeah, because we were talking about Coca-Cola, just reminded me of this.
Annual revenue is $16 billion.
Yeah.
Oh. How can their annual revenue be 16 billion, but their value be 52 billion?
That's a good question. The all cash.
I mean, in terms of valuation,
net income, revenue. Oh, I see. Okay, so operating income is only 4 billion. Revenue is 16 billion. Is revenue the one where you don't? It's just
revenue is just the amount of money you bring in.
Okay.
It's just
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you spend 15 of that.
Well,
I wonder what
valuations
go.
Valuations generally are what, like 5 to 7 times the EBITDA. Is that how you say it?
Yeah. So you're talking about that would be like 3.3.
Yeah.
Times. So that's pretty unusual.
And they were fined £448,000.
Operating a cartel in Belgium. Yeah, I hear some pretty nasty stuff about Brazilian beer, the legacy beers anyway. That they, well, first they use like all sorts of grain, like corn and rice and shit.
Yes.
And their quality control was not good.
Yeah.
We've had like kind of an explosion in microbrews and then sort of premium popular brands.
Are there Brazilian hipsters?
So.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've told you that at some point I had.
I think in Liberia they're called dandies.
But I told you at some point I had 2 barbershops on my street, like hipster barbershops.
Oh, specifically hipster barbershops. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's what barbershops we have in Brazil.
Oh, okay.
We don't have like actual
where there's a tough Italian guy. He's got nudie pictures on the wall. He makes fun of you while cutting your hair. He's like,
you have the hipster dudes and who do your.
I got you.
You get a beer with the shave
at the barbershop.
Yeah,
you can.
Here, guys, one second.
Yeah, that's part of the thing. That's part of the hipster appeal.
It just sounds like alcoholism.
Yeah, but gin is the new thing in Brazil.
New thing.
Well, it's sort of the drink of the moment. That's what I'm drinking.
Made a renaissance. Yeah.
I got a little home distiller.
The world's best craft gin producer is Brazilian.
Which one is it? Amazoni?
Amazoni.
Yeah, but that's the same.
Amazoni.
We have some good craft gin. I actually went to visit a really good Brazilian one called Beg
Gin,
which is in my city.
All the tubes and stuff, you need that too, right? If you're gonna make.
Well, you need a distiller. It's I have one that's 5 liters, and I buy grain alcohol for.
So you're just putting the
yeah. But this distiller, I visited the distillery. It's like a thing where you go and you make your own gin and drink the whole time. They use grain alcohol too. They buy grain alcohol and just do the infusion.
Yep.
Gin is juniper and cilantro seeds. That's the basic ingredients of gin.
Been drinking it my whole life. I didn't know about the cilantro part. I think I I think I don't mind cilantro, right? There's like 20% of people like find it tastes like soap,
Yeah.
and I've never had.
But I quite like cilantro.
Yeah,
but the seeds, not the. Actually, you call it coriander. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry. The seeds are coriander, but it's the same.
Oh, that's coriander is cilantro seeds. I'm learning all sorts of new stuff.
Because we call it the same thing here.
Okay.
We just say the leaves and the seeds.
Gotcha. Arab League boycotted. Okay, now I'm still looking at Coca-Cola here. Oh yeah, I wanted to see Coca-Cola murders. Here we go.
I think it's Central America.
Jose in Carepa. Is Carepa in Colombia?
Colombia. Okay, I didn't know about that.
In Colombia.
Because you had a lot of, United Fruit Company was the big offender that everyone knows about.
That
not in Brazil,
like got murdered, but that was like selling
United,
fruits to like white chicks in America.
United Fruit Company? Are you kidding? You've never?
Let's look it up.
You've never heard? That's like basically what they're famous for. and that's what like Banana Republics.
I love when you look something up and it's the United Fruit Company was an American corporation, so it's gone now. It doesn't.
Yeah,
like a person.
Just the table of contents here: reputation, history in Latin America, banana massacre, Honduras, attempted state capture.
It has its own section, and then it has its own Wikipedia page. The banana. Oh no.
Yeah, no, and when you talk about a banana republic, it's almost entirely about the United Fruit Company, or mainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I knew in Central America that there was a guy with a mustache who's on the shirts of a lot of commie hipsters in America, and he just liked to shoot people in the back of the head. He shot people in the back of the head.
Che is not mainly Central American.
He's
he did
South American.
Yeah.
Okay, so
even though he hated the Cuban Revolution.
South of America, including just the American South. I really just designate all that as stuff.
He was Argentine.
You're all Mexican.
I actually
right?
didn't know.
He was Mexican. You're Mexican. Same difference. Edwin, you're Mexican.
Oh, that's right.
So I'm learning about the origin of the term Banana Republic. I did not know that there were these things called the banana massacres.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you knew this, Edwin, that the term Banana Republic largely came from the countries associated with this United Fruit Company, which was known to be particularly sort of bloody and to meddle very, very extensively in the politics of the countries they worked in.
This is in Guatemala, right? In 1950s?
This is 20.
It was more than one country. I think Guatemala was one of the big ones. Hold on. Honduras.
I have the honor to report that the legal advisor of the United Fruit Company here in Bogota stated yesterday that the total number of strikers killed by the Colombian military authorities during the recent disturbance reached between 500 and 600, while the number of soldiers killed was 1.
Fuck. Here's something from the United Fruit Company.
They were just firing into crowds, I guess.
Yeah. Here's something from the United Fruit Company page. In 1901, the government of Guatemala hired the United Fruit Company to manage the country's postal service.
Weird. Did they find a way to make it go post? All right.
By 1930, it had become the largest employer in Central America.
It's so crazy that we're like the Earth was not, all nation states until 60 years ago or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, think about that.
Yeah. I mean,
the company held a major role in the national economies of
like
several countries, became a symbol of exploitative export economy.
They attempted a state capture, whatever the hell that means. They tried to take over a country.
Yep.
Honduras.
And countries are corporations too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a corporation.
I mean, if you look at the original conception of the state,
right,
pretty much functioned as a corporation in ways. Like,
we're all going to sign a magic document, and declare ourselves independent, and then shift liability into this sort of.
Also, you have to have profits
entity.
based on how the people are doing. You have profits, and then you use that to make investments to make sure companies more productive. It's a very structured, like the finances are structured like a corporation.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the thinking was that.
And then what does MMT mean then? Because the corporation printing its own money? Mm-hmm.
And like, you've read Moldbug, right?
Yes.
A bit. I have not read all of Unqualified Reservations. I've read a gentle introduction.
No,
I think I read like 7 of the chapters. How many chapters were there? Was there 12?
Unqualified Reservations went on for years, so
yeah, I've read quite a bit.
I've searched around for keywords in Unqualified Reservations and found all sorts of things, especially in the comments. There's a lot of random like internet celebrities or like nerds would just nerd celebrities would just show up, and you'd be like, hey,
he's making a bit of a comeback now, right?
Yeah.
Well,
he posted about COVID.
Yeah, he did.
Yes. Yeah, and he dropped the pen name.
Curtis.
Yarvin.
Yeah, Curtis Yarvin. Yeah, dude, he's fucking.
Sophia keeps telling me to learn Urbit. She thinks it's the future.
Yeah, everybody I know who understands Urbit thinks it's the future.
She
keeps telling me, you got to be the man and
right before, you have to
figure out Urbit.
Before Bitcoin crashed, he moved Urbit over to Ethereum. Did you on the Ethereum blockchain you can run applications?
Wait, okay, but wait. I know. What do you mean by he moved it over to Ethereum? Was it on the Bitcoin network before? I don't think so.
Not at all. Yeah.
So what do you mean by he moved it to Ethereum? You mean like?
I actually don't understand. I'd love to have an episode on Urbit where you guys explain it to me, because I actually have very little idea.
I don't think
it is.
Urbit could run on Ethereum. I think like certain applications of Urbit could run on the Ethereum network, but I think Urbit itself could just run on Ethereum.
We've decided to launch Urbit's constitution as a system of Ethereum contracts. We'll instantiate a land registry for Urbit address space, an ERC20 Spark token, which is burned to create a generic star. There's a star is an Urbit thing, yeah. And a voting.
That's really
interesting.
I wonder what that says about Cardano.
Oh,
like, does Ethereum just have that network effect, like at this point, and it doesn't matter?
It's just got more coverage.
Would you guys like to do this for a future episode?
For an episode? Yeah. It might not be the very next one. The one we're going to do on Friday.
I mean, that's fine. That's fine. But like, I can continue to be ignorant, and we'll do one where you guys explain it to me.
Caio.
Yep.
So we've been talking a lot about modern monetary theory. Have you paid attention to that at all?
I followed a little bit about it. Yeah. Of the discussion. I didn't watch the episode, but I followed some of the discussion in the group.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. You should check it out.
Yeah, like I know a little bit about it. I think right. I mean,
magic money tree.
I think that's
such a mischaracterization.
It says it's failing miserably in Brazil.
It's such a mischaracterization.
They can't.
I don't know enough to.
They're not set up for that.
Right. I don't know enough to say whether it was actually modern monetary theory that they were doing. I mean, my sense is just that. Let's see what year.
What do you mean? You can't do modern monetary theory.
Well, you can act on the basis of modern monetary theory, right?
You can assume it's
so what I mean is, my sense is that the Workers' Party and the leftist movements really just would take any reason to expand government spending. And I'm sure they would rely on modern monetary theory as a justification, but I have no idea if their policies were in line with it.
It wasn't popular around that time.
Yeah, I think like my sense is that it was just brought up as a sort of deficits don't matter retort to the liberal economic argument that the overspending put Brazil in a tough spot.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Brazil would be a fascinating case study, but I really don't have the knowledge to
you should
make
check
that
it out.
analysis.
If you just, as someone
He doesn't
who's
have SSL on
who's interested in how things work generally, I think you should check it out. Yeah.
I want to see if he mentions modern monetary.
I think we're mostly Keynesians, and the question is like, is it, like by default? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Paul, you did notice that qualified reservations got migrated to a different address, right?
I did not.
Open up that first link. Just open it up.
This one though, or
no, the one you already did, or
okay.
I guess that would be it. Yeah.
Site. Modern monetary theory. I'd be surprised if he actually mentioned. Oh, there we go. Well, wait. Did I put it in?
But maybe not.
I didn't.
Well, because he quit qualified reservations.
Yeah, a while ago.
Yeah, a while ago before people really started talking about.
Here we go. It's worth arguing for a moment with the modern super Chartalists or Moslerites who have awarded their system the pretentious caption of, quote, modern monetary theory, or MMT.
Who's this?
This is Moldbach writing this.
Back in 2011, wow.
I take the acronym as a personal insult. It conflicts with my own Moldbug monetary theory. Indeed, the same modern ideas are found in the great 30s inflationists Silvio Dussel and C.H. Douglas, not to mention Atwood a century earlier, but of John Stuart Mill's immortal essay, The Currency Juggle. The juggle, indeed, has never been zanier. Every juggle is based on some fundamental truth. It's important to recognize the fundamental truth behind this new outbreak of Ezra Pound economics, which is that fiat currency is sovereign equity. Wait, he lost me there. Sorry. Fiat currency. Dollars.
Look at the next sentence.
Shares of stock in USG. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
I mean, if we look at that in terms of Brazil, for example, if we talk about the real as shares in the stock of Brazil, I mean, there are legitimate questions about the value of Brazil, right? Like Brazil could go belly up, as Argentina has in the past.
Right.
So
but you guys still have to hold foreign reserves to pay for goods you're importing, right?
I suppose, yeah, we do.
Yeah,
and we do have that though. Them.
Then you can't do it. Like the idea is because like a lot of the reason if you have to use U.S. dollars to pay for goods that are being imported, and then
you can't print those. Well, you can, but the U.S. will get very angry.
Then you just devalue your currency. Leads to inflation.
If you have to pay for it in U.S. dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
So you still have to take your currency, exchange
we have
it for
almost
US dollars.
400 billion US. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean you have to basically you have to produce enough things that you don't to the point where you don't need foreign reserves.
I see, we have between 300 and 400 billion US dollars.
So my point is you need to you need to produce enough things.
Yeah, no,
so
we are not a reserve currency, and obviously that.
No,
puts
it's
us
not
in-
even about being a reserve, because like, you know, like, is China a reserve currency? Maybe for some countries, or like,
yeah.
but a lot of countries like produce enough stuff that the like, you know, the printing money doesn't lead to like super hyperinflation. It could produce enough of the things that they use in their own society.
And it's at least in some way related to. Oh, this is one of the new kittens.
Oh,
he's a Maine Coon. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some relation with you know the confidence of really everyone who holds the currency in the country's long-term solvency, or of the economy, really, and there isn't really that sort of confidence in Brazilian economy.
Let's put it this way: if Brazil's fiscal situation like got completely out of hand, the world would go on.
Yeah,
the same thing happened to China or the U.S.
It would not. Yeah, go on.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
so
but-
there's more at stake, but also it might be. I mean, you're saying, okay, the fact that if these places collapsed, that would be far worse for everyone. Hence, it's less probable that they would collapse. But that's an argument about interconnectedness.
I'm not even talking about the
probability of collapse. Okay.
I'm just talking about the state of an economy that allows governments to do different things.
Yeah.
And our interconnectedness with the rest of or the fact that so much of the rest of the world's economy relies on us and relies on China, is that?
Actually, that point wasn't relevant because they're
is it? Well, I'm
like
sure
Australia has been running a deficit for 90 years.
And they're connected to like the wider Commonwealth kind of Australia, the US, New Zealand, there's a couple of countries that are propped up.
I guess it's
Canada. Yeah.
It's got to be related to productive capacity, right?
It is completely related to
and the confidence that like this rolling debt will keep being repaid.
Yes.
Right, because if you buy a bond or some other
gold around,
right, well, because if you buy a bond or some other government instrument, you know your confidence is for the time frame of that instrument. You know that the country will remain solvent or will have the productive capacity where it will be able to pay it back, and the currency will have value within that time frame. I guess in a microeconomic sense, right? If you put yourself in the shoes of an investor who's buying government debt.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's it.
Yeah, and I totally would buy that a country with an enormous productive capacity has a much more elastic ability to just accumulate more debt and just eventually it won't eventually default. I guess if the country is never actually going to pay it back, the question is like, will the interest payments, either the interest payments
or just the ability to
break the country, or the currency be devalued and run into inflation, such that this.
Well, the main thing is
no longer worth holding.
More money to pay the interest.
One of the main observations by modern monetary theorists is that governments, like central banks, can just, and the Fed has been doing this for like a decade now, but can just take debts and put it on their balance sheets.
And just kind of, and then just turn the pencil around and just erase, and then it's just
it's literally like just system of debits and credits, but they can theoretically, even if prices react, they can eventually like take debt that's on the market, put it on their balance sheet, and reset interest rates.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking of like the way the system works, and in terms of like individual, actions that drive it, the debt needs to roll over, right? That is, the debt is constantly renewed, and in terms of new financial instruments, right? So let's simplify and just say a bond, right? Government bond, and so whether a bond is worth, so like a government will pay the bonds that are maturing now with new bonds that are being issued, basically, right? That's how the debt rolls over, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
basically at this point, because there's like $1 trillion deficit even before all this spending.
Well, but I guess modern monetary theory would say, and I don't think it's wrong about it as such, is that you can roll the debt indefinitely. You can't grow the debt indefinitely.
They're saying like the risk of a default of the sovereign in the case of certain economies is not worth constraining deficit spending.
Yeah,
it's not like
except the case of default of Brazil, for instance, kind of
right, because Brazil is not.
Yeah, as has happened to Argentina, and we've seen it happen multiple times. Right. So
I don't know enough about Argentina's history though, because I feel like
I would rather not. I'd have to read up a little bit about it to.
I feel like it's like Venezuela in the U.S. where people are like, oh, you're printing money, you're gonna default, like Venezuela or like Zimbabwe. People actually
no. Argentina is not as bad as Venezuela. Like Argentina has not had the sort of humanitarian crisis. Yeah. Just like a very severe economic recessions.
Right. Like how many? They've had like a couple or 3 in the past 20 years.
Yeah, something like that. I'd have to read up a bit on it because it's not that fresh in my memory. I just remember as it was happening, and of course, like as there are neighbors to the south, we're very like aware of they're similar in many ways economically to us, where we compare ourselves to them a lot, right?
Right.
So
you would think they'd be doing better though.
Yeah, I don't know what. Let me see. Hold on.
Something you want me to pull up?
I'm just looking into Argentina default. Argentina heads for 9th sovereign debt default.
9th?
9th.
What?
This month.
It's their default position. All right. Never mind.
I don't understand.
How do you even do that?
Yeah, damn. Yeah, because I guess at some point, if like you can't roll the debt. Roll on the debt if you can't get people to buy new bonds.
Right. See, the interesting thing about the U.S. system is that the banks basically hold treasury notes as their reserves because it's more profitable for them to do that than just to hold on to the actual reserves.
Okay.
So it creates like perpetual demand for U.S. treasuries.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if you can like take, let's say the interest payments are getting too high, and you clear a bunch of them off the balance sheet, even if that like fucks with demand on the regular market, which is relatively small to the amount of the treasuries that the Fed owns itself anyway. If the Fed does something funky, demand stabilizes. Because the banks have to it's like either you're holding American dollars or you're holding American bonds. Your risk profile doesn't change much.
basically just money
So it's
printer
just-
go burr.
Yeah, if the economy is to function at all, there's going to be a demand for American bonds.
Yeah.
Go faster, burr.
But yeah, just seeing here, yeah, just constant, ouch. Third year of recession with 50% inflation.
What?
Yeah, that's rough.
It's
here, I'm just gonna.
worse.
It's an article from the Financial Times from this month.
Oh, drop it.
Why are they
post a link
like?
here.
That's why I respect the president of Liberia, who was able to be like, okay, like
Soccer player?
no, the guy who like made sure we didn't default.
Yeah, that's
Good
You
for
know?
him. He's like,
Yeah.
everybody's gonna tighten your belts a little bit.
So you guys are gonna
Oh, that'll
eat
be
shit
fun.
for a few years, but we're not gonna default, and then
Yeah.
you know, fucking pays off. Like
Argentina
you have to
heads
understand
for
the system
tonight.
you're operating in.
Analysts expect the country to make bondholders an offer they cannot accept. You're gonna make him an offer he can't accept.
right, and that seems like the issue, right? Like if you can't entice people to buy bonds to pay off the old bondholders, you have to just pay off the old bondholders directly.
So what are the projections for Argentina?
Oh, I have no idea, but it's pretty bad.
I fear that Argentina may jump into the pool without first making sure there is water in it. That's
Oh God.
dear. It's very hard to be optimistic, this person said. This is great.
I wonder like what coronavirus is gonna do, because like assume we have
There's
a
some-
shutdown.
Uh-huh.
Assume we have the shutdown continues for a while. The government's gonna print a lot of money, and you know, so we might end up with like a $6-7 trillion deficit this year, or something ridiculous like
Good
that.
Lord.
Yikes.
When you say print, though, they're not actually running the printers because that's going to create jobs.
No, because nobody actually prints money anymore. They're just
Right.
like
They
crediting
just
account
add a zero.
And I mean, what happens is they just give like really rich people more money, and that's what they've been doing.
And then it trickles down when the rich people pee on the faces of the hobos they have chained up in the pit in their basement.
It trickles down to small business owners because their companies get bought,
Same
but it doesn't trickle down to workers.
Right. They have small business
I
owners
just wonder
in their basement.
I just wonder what people are like, how the conversation about hyperinflation is going to occur in the United States after a year like that. You know, like, because I don't think we're going to have any, like, we might have asset inflation, but they're not giving like ordinary people enough money to cause hyperinflation in the ordinary economy. I mean, that would require like a substantial amount of money to increase spending power by that much. So, like, I don't know. I just wonder if it's going to lead to any kind of serious conversation about the nature of the debt and the deficits and inflation in the United States.
Nope, probably not. We're probably all gonna,
not.
Yeah.
Probably going to start arguing how. But I mean, like, what? Like, is Paul Ryan going to argue that we got like, because they were saying like what we're doing. Like the bailouts in 2008 were going to lead to hyperinflation. That was the reason.
This is a terrible tweet that you will appreciate, Paul.
Oh boy.
What are we
Industrial
doing
pig, trash your street. You're the sex slave being snuck into the Oval Office by the Secret Service. And that's... Hey, there you go, everyone.
Oh God.
Oh boy.
Dude, he's a rapist.
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah.
He's a legit rapist.
Larry.
And he probably didn't only do it once.
Yeah. I heard some people saying that it was like well known that he was handsy.
They removed
in DC circles.
Oh yeah. Well, and there's photos of it. I mean,
it's kind of fun. No, but like more than just the public,
So
excessive touching.
In a Larry King Live segment that aired in August 11th, 1993 on CNN, an unnamed woman calls into the show with her location identified on the screen as San Luis Obispo, California. San Luis. The show was about the cutthroat nature of Washington, D.C. politics and media. Yes, hello. I'm wondering what a staffer would do besides go to the press in Washington, she asked. My daughter has just left there after working for a prominent senator and could not get through with her problems at all.
Returning to the 2020 campaign and why a video
so basically, she called in and said, my daughter is, hint, hint, something is up, and she's left because she couldn't go to the police or whatever. And basically, they just removed that Larry King segment from any of the like streaming sites that have the old episodes, and they even renumbered all the subsequent episodes in order to avoid that. So that one episode,
CNN did?
It was whoever.
Larry I read something about that, but I also read something saying that that's not. Hold on.
Dude, he rapes. He clearly rapes. And
so
it's like,
a choice between
and the Democrats, like rich rapists, and the Democrats like had Al Franken resign from his Senate seat for just like taking a picture where he was pretending to touch somebody's
That was so dumb.
But so if he could resign over that,
him, basically,
and now like not only did this thing come up with her mom saying it was legit, but then 2 other people testified to like her telling them at the time that Biden fucking like moved in on her and like fingered her.
And he's not just handsy with adults either, man. This guy's got some real problems.
Like, this is just crazy. We're like, we have 2 just like delusional old rapists.
Snopes says it's false, though, you know, I don't trust Snopes all that much.
It's false about that the segment was there? Because, I mean,
that it was removed.
That it just never aired or something? What are they? Let's see.
Yeah, maybe they didn't remove it. I mean, that's not like CNN has like just not like literally somebody else scooped this story, even though it was their footage, because they just didn't look into it.
The image of the Google Play Store, August 10th and August 11th, not August 11th, later deleted, Hamilton accused CNN of actively colluding with the Biden campaign, blah, blah, blah. So this is the thing I saw, which is the missing between episode 154 and episode 155. There's a day missing there, and that was supposedly the day that interview happened. The above display is genuine if you go to the Google Play Store. However, the episode that they removed the episode quickly falls apart when we take a look at the available information. Yeah, but the numbering of the episodes, what? The show.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard.
None of these excuses they're giving mean anything. This is
it doesn't seem definitive to me.
I'm pretty sure Snopes says like Jeffrey Epstein, killed himself.
Yes, Snopes is. I know of some pretty shady thing. Yeah, articles on Snopes.
Snopes says Jeffrey Epstein
I don't see how
isn't real.
What?
He was never alive.
Do you think Biden could win? Unless something really bad happens with this virus,
he might.
It's not impossible.
Likely. It's not impossible, but goddamn, dude.
Yeah.
Did you see the video where his wife has to like come in and tell him, "Okay, honey, we're done talking," dude, and he comes off the stage like he's like, how do you manage to see more out of it than Trump right now, when Trump is like in the midst of the COVID thing and he's still at least.
And he wants to inject bleach into everyone.
Oh, Jesus.
Like we are doomed as a species if this shit keeps happening.
It's like something I would have said when I was like 8, and then I would have been carefully corrected by an adult, and then moved on and never made that mistake again. Like the putting, because you know about disinfectants, they kill things, but like everybody has that thought. Everyone who's like, oh, how can you cure? And then you figure out, no, they also kill you if they're in duh. Like it's not unheard of. It's just the childlike simplicity of the stupidity of it's scary that's he's in his 70s now, right? It's like the Louis C.K. bit about kings, why the king's son was always he's like, yeah, you guys spent his whole life drinking chocolate and raping chambermaids. An asshole. What would you expect him to be? Like, that's you're formed by your, and I guess with Trump's case, he's basically the same deal. So this segment existed. The Snopes thing is purely saying that the removal of that episode's listing on Google Play, that's the part that's the conspiracy or whatever, that's not true. That's just a conspiracy theory. I don't really care about the that they deleted the episode's availability from they removed it.
Delete it?
I mean, it's not available on the Google Play, but the Snopes is saying, oh, none of the episodes are available. If you click them,
did they like make none of them available when this thing started?
Maybe that's what happened. Maybe they did it right away. Yeah. I mean, none of these.
I mean, CNN is clearly propaganda at this point. Like who?
Yeah, of course.
Like, I mean, like.
Well, that part's that's. All right.
Yeah. CNN is ISIS, guys.
They should just have ISIS and the ISIS News Network.
I think Trump probably did the most to break their perceived legitimacy.
CNN?
Probably like he did that all with that one tweet where like that WWE video.
Yes, and then the death threat. And
did you see that one, Caio?
That's stupid.
Which one?
There's because there's this video like Trump is in the WWE and he like body slams someone.
Up here.
I don't think I've seen it.
Okay, should play this video.
Yeah, Trump tweets.
Oh, okay, no, I have. It's funny.
It was so, and they were like, "That's a death threat," and everyone was like, "You're all insane." Let's see if the tweet is here. Come on.
But there's some bullshit. I don't know. Just there's what's her face.
Oh, wonderful ads.
There's
28 seconds of presidential political theater.
Just the head is just motion tracked.
From the official U.S. government Twitter account and his personal @RealDonaldTrump feed. A provocative takedown
I just love that that's
depicting
actually
the president
him
tackling CNN,
fake
ratcheting up his run-ins.
The fake media is trying to silence you.
But the president's tweet contains its own fakery. The video was already on the internet. That CNN logo added to this 2007 pretend fight between businessman Donald Trump and wrestling empire CEO Vince McMahon.
Oh, God.
A world he is not familiar with. This is not
security advisors. The president is defending himself, not inciting violence.
I think that no one would perceive that as a threat. I hope they don't. But I do think that he's beaten up in a way on cable platforms that he has a right to respond to.
CNN responded in a statement. It is a sad day when the president of the United States urges violence against reporters. We will keep doing our jobs. He should start doing his.
Oh my God!
Opposition to the president.
When was this? Like 2018?
Wait, like in the future, people are going to see CNN as the idiot for this set. Like, I mean, we do now, but like,
yeah. No, I'm sure.
In history classes, it'll be like, how out of touch were these people? The idea that like somebody can tweet a meme and be like, "Oh, you're inciting violence."
I mean, but there's some real. You guys know Amy Therese?
No.
It's very niche, but she's just like a dirtbag left Twitter personality. Maybe not quite dirtbag, just like sort of a more orthodox.
The dirtbag left is the best part of the left, though.
Yeah. Well, let's say
they're the anti-SJW left.
No, yeah. Maybe I'm splitting hairs. She's like an orthodox Marxist, sort of somewhat socially conservative leftist.
What?
You guys know Justin Murphy?
Sounds like a tanky.
No, but not. Well, whatever. But she's sort of anti-social justice, more orthodox Marxist, sort of leftist, and she got a lot of hate for that. And she was banned, like forever from Twitter for tweeting about Elizabeth Warren a couple months back. We have to beat her.
What?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yes. Twitter, what the?
They were like,
there's some really ridiculous.
You see, they banned the guy, like a Tea Party. I mean, a Green Party candidate.
No, I haven't seen it.
They just banned the account of like the Green Party's candidate.
That's ridiculous.
I don't even understand how, like.
And yet,
at some point, the state should step in because it's not.
I guess I don't know, man.
Or we should find the state should. Or people should find a way to encourage an alternative media source like Gab, which right now is just like all the people,
maybe
just the people who Twitter kicks out.
See, I'm just talking about if you look at how these networks function, though, it's unlikely that people who care about free speech are going to create
You need it's cringy phrasing, but you need like a couple killer apps, so to speak. Which is why I think YouTube tolerates like PewDiePie, because they know if PewDiePie goes to an alternative network, that network is going to be like a legit contender against YouTube.
He and Joe Rogan should get together and form.
Right. Yeah,
they
could do it.
They could do it.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson back in the day, not anymore because he's lost momentum, but. Well, he's not nearly as big as PewDiePie or Rogan.
You remember when the South Park episode had PewDiePie?
They did a PewDiePie episode.
That was fantastic.
All right, guys, it's almost 2 o'clock here. I have to go to sleep, so
all right.
All right.
But it's been good, guys.
This has.
Yeah, let's do it again soon.
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna do it on Friday, so.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool.
You can join that one.
We'll talk.
All right.
All right. Cool beans.